When I was cleaning out Nathan's home office that morning, I wasn't supposed to discover the paternity test hidden behind the bookshelf, showing a 99.9% match to a child I'd never heard of before. But there it was, along with years of secret, payments to his ex-girlfriend Vanessa, and photos of a little boy who had my husband's eyes. I'm Sophia Reynolds, and this is how I confronted my husband's decade of lies in front of our entire family at the event he least expected, our 10th anniversary celebration that I'd spent months planning. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The irony of discovering the truth about Nathan's secret family while preparing for our anniversary wasn't lost on me. The envelope had slipped behind his antique bookcase, and I only found it because I was clearing the room for the new furniture. Delivery. A surprise anniversary gift to upgrade his workspace. I wouldn't have even been in there if I hadn't wanted everything to be perfect for our celebration. At first, I thought it might be old medical records or something equally mundane. The yellowing envelope was dated 8 years ago, just 2 years into our marriage. But when I pulled out the contents, the clinical letterhead of Accurate Genetic Testing Services made my stomach drop. Test subject: Nathan Reynolds, positive paternity, match 99.9% to minor child Ethan Porter. My hands didn't shake. My coffee remained steady on his desk as I kept reading. 8 years of marriage, and I'd never once suspected Nathan had a child with someone else. A child conceived around the same time we were dating. A child he'd kept hidden from me while building our life together. As I kept digging through the envelope, I found more damning evidence. A series of money transfer receipts to Vanessa Porter, his college girlfriend I thought he'd broken up with years before we met. Monthly payments of $2,500 dating back 8 years. And most heartbreaking of all, school photos of a little boy who looked strikingly like Nathan. The most recent photo showed a 7-year-old with Nathan's distinctive hazel eyes and dimpled smile, proudly holding a baseball trophy. I remembered Nathan's monthly investment contributions that automatically left our account. When we first married, I'd asked about them, and he'd explained they were for a special retirement fund his financial advisor had recommended. "It's better if I handle it," he'd said. "All the paperwork gets complicated." I'd trusted him completely, focusing instead on building my interior design business while he managed our finances. I sat there in his office chair, surrounded by evidence of his deception, cycling through shock, betrayal, and rage. The memories flooded back. Nathan's work trips that often extended over weekends, the unexplained absences during holidays, how he always volunteered to travel to Portland where, coincidentally, Vanessa had moved according to the addresses on the payment receipts. My phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. "Meeting running late. Don't wait up. Love you." It was Tuesday night. He'd told me he had a client dinner. I wondered now if he was actually with them, his other family that I never knew existed. "Perfect," I typed back. "Gives me more time to finish up your anniversary. Surprise." I took a deep breath and began methodically photographing every document, every receipt, every picture. Then I carefully replaced everything exactly as I'd found it. If there was one thing my career as an interior designer had taught me, it was attention to detail. That night, I didn't confront him when he came home smelling of unfamiliar perfume. I didn't break down when he kissed my forehead and asked about my day. Instead, I told him about the new caterer I'd confirmed for our anniversary party, asked about his client dinner, and pretended nothing had changed. But everything had changed. In a few short hours, my perception of our entire marriage had been shattered. Every anniversary we'd celebrated, every conversation about starting our own family when the time was right, every moment of our life together now felt like part of an elaborate lie. The next morning, I waited until Nathan left for work before reaching out to the one person I knew I could trust. My best friend Renee had never fully warmed to Nathan, always saying there was something too polished about him. I'd defended him for years, believing her reservations stemmed from her own divorce. Now I wondered if her instincts had been right all along. "Coffee. Now. Emergency," I texted her. "On my way," she replied immediately. No questions asked. Spent the hour before her arrival searching our home for any other secrets Nathan might be keeping. When I was cleaning out Nathan's home office that morning, I wasn't supposed to discover the paternity test hidden behind the bookshelf, showing a 99.9% match to a child I'd never heard of before. But there it was, along with years of secret, payments to his ex-girlfriend Vanessa, and photos of a little boy who had my husband's eyes. I'm Sophia Reynolds, and this is how I confronted my husband's decade of lies in front of our entire family at the event he least expected. Our 10th anniversary celebration that I'd spent months planning. The irony of discovering the truth about Nathan's secret family while preparing for our anniversary wasn't lost on me. The envelope had slipped behind his antique bookcase, and I only found it because I was clearing the room for the new furniture. Delivery, a surprise anniversary gift to upgrade his workspace. I wouldn't have even been in there if I hadn't wanted everything to be perfect for our celebration. At first, I thought it might be old medical records or something equally mundane. The yellowing envelope was dated 8 years ago, just 2 years, into our marriage. But when I pulled out the contents, the clinical letterhead of Accurate Genetic Testing Services made my stomach drop. My hands didn't shake. My coffee remained steady on his desk as I kept reading. 8 years of marriage, and I'd never once suspected Nathan had a child with someone else. A child conceived around the same time we were dating. A child he'd kept hidden from me while building our life together. As I kept digging through the envelope, I found more damning evidence. A series of money transfer receipts to Vanessa Porter, his college girlfriend I thought he'd broken up with years before we met. Monthly payments of $2,500 dating back 8 years, and most heartbreaking of all, school photos of a little boy who looked strikingly like Nathan. The most recent photo showed a 7-year-old with Nathan's distinctive hazel eyes and dimpled smile, proudly holding a baseball trophy. I remembered Nathan's monthly investment contributions that automatically left our account. When we first married, I'd asked about them, and he'd explained they were for a special retirement fund his financial advisor had recommended. "It's better if I handle it," he'd said. "All the paperwork gets complicated." I'd trusted him completely, focusing instead on building my interior design business while he managed our finances. I sat there in his office chair, surrounded by evidence of his deception, cycling through shock, betrayal, and rage. The memories flooded back. Nathan's work trips that often extended over weekends, the unexplained absences during holidays, how he always volunteered to travel to Portland where, coincidentally, Vanessa had moved according to the addresses on the payment receipts. My phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. "Meeting running late. Don't wait up. Love you." It was Tuesday night. He'd told me he had a client dinner. I wondered now if he was actually with them, his other family that I never knew existed. "Perfect," I typed back. "Gives me more time to finish up your anniversary." Surprise. I took a deep breath and began methodically photographing every document, every receipt, every picture. Then I carefully replaced everything exactly as I'd found it. If there was one thing my career as an interior designer had taught me, it was attention to detail. That night, I didn't confront him when he came home smelling of unfamiliar perfume. I didn't break down when he kissed my forehead and asked about my day. Instead, I told him about the new caterer I'd confirmed for our anniversary party, asked about his client dinner, and pretended nothing had changed. But everything had changed. In a few short hours, my perception of our entire marriage had been shattered. Every anniversary we'd celebrated, every conversation about starting our own family, when the time was right, every moment of our life together now felt like part of an elaborate lie. The next morning, I waited until Nathan left for work before reaching out to the one person I knew I could trust. My best friend Renee had never fully warmed to Nathan, always saying there was something too polished about him. I'd defended him for years, believing her reservations stemmed from her own divorce. Now I wondered if her instincts had been right all along. "Coffee. Now. Emergency," I texted her. "On my way," she replied immediately, no questions asked. I spent the hour before her arrival searching our home for any other secrets Nathan might be keeping. In his closet, I found a hidden pocket in his weekend bag containing a second phone, basic and prepaid. The call history showed weekly conversations, with V and occasional calls to someone labeled simply as E, Vanessa and Ethan. There were voicemails I couldn't access without his password, emails I couldn't read. But I'd seen enough. The man I'd married, the life we'd built together, was partially a fabrication. While I'd been transparent about everything, he'd been maintaining a separate life with his ex-girlfriend and their child. When Renee arrived, I silently handed her the photos I'd taken of the paternity test and payments. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "That manipulative bastard," she whispered after reviewing everything. "Sophia, I'm so sorry." 8 years, Renee. 8 years of lying to my face every single day? My voice sounded strange even to my own ears, calm, detached, as though I were discussing someone else's marriage. "What are you going to do? Confront him? Divorce him?" I looked at the anniversary party invitation sitting on my kitchen counter. The elegant cardstock announced a celebration of a decade of love and truth at the Grand Lakeview Hotel this Saturday evening. I'd spent months planning every detail, from the custom photo timeline of our relationship to the heartfelt vows we planned to renew in front of our closest friends and family. "No," I said slowly, an idea taking shape. "I'm going to give him exactly the anniversary celebration he deserves." Renee recognized the look in my eyes. "Whatever you're thinking, I'm in." "I need to find Vanessa," I said. "The real Vanessa, not the story Nathan's been telling her about me, or telling me about her. How are you going to do that without Nathan finding out?" I smiled, though it felt more like baring my teeth. "I'm going to use the money he's been hiding from me all these years." I'd discovered Nathan's secret investment account while searching. Through his desk drawer, the account where he'd been siphoning money beyond the payments to Vanessa. Nearly $200,000 that I never knew existed, hidden from our joint finances. Password protection hadn't been an issue. Nathan always used the same one for everything. His college football jersey number, followed by his mother's birthday. "I need a private investigator," I told Renee. "Someone discreet who can track down Vanessa in Portland and find out what she knows. Maybe she's as much a victim in this as I am." "My divorce lawyer used someone good," Renee said, already scrolling through her phone contacts. "He specializes in uncovering hidden assets and secrets during high-conflict divorces." While she made the call, I stared at the photo of young Ethan. He hadn't asked for any of this. Whatever happened next would affect him too, a child who might not even know about me or the web of lies surrounding his existence. "His name is David Mercer," Renee said, covering the phone. "He can meet us this afternoon." I nodded, my resolve strengthening. "Tell him to bring everything he has on specialized surveillance equipment. If Nathan's been living a double life, I want to know every detail before I decide what happens next." Because while Nathan thought he was orchestrating the perfect deception, he had no idea that I was about to rescript our anniversary celebration into something far more memorable than the romantic renewal of vows he was expecting. Sometimes the most powerful reckoning isn't delivered in a heated moment of discovery. It's methodically planned and served in front of 50 of your closest friends and family members when there's nowhere left to hide. My phone buzzed with a message from Nathan. "Can't wait for Saturday. 10 years with my perfect woman. Nothing has made me happier than building a life with you." I stared at his words, so sincere seeming despite the mountain of evidence proving their hollowness. I typed back a response that was equally false. Me too, honey. It's going to be a night no one will ever forget. And that, at least, was the absolute truth. Before I tell you what happened next in this twisted saga, let me introduce myself properly. My name is Sophia Reynolds, formerly Sophia Blackwell, and until 4 days ago, I thought I was living a charmed life with my husband of 10 years. I run a successful interior design business in Seattle that I built from the ground up while supporting Nathan through his rise at a prestigious investment firm. We live, or I should say lived, in a beautifully restored craftsman home in the Queen Anne neighborhood, with views of the Space Needle and Puget Sound that took my breath away every morning. I met Nathan during my final year of design school. He was handsome, ambitious, and seemed refreshingly honest about what he wanted in life. No games, no drama, he'd promised on our third date. Just straightforward partnership. I fell for his apparent authenticity, his drive, and the way he seemed to truly see me. We married after 2 years of dating in a sunset ceremony overlooking the Pacific Ocean. It was perfect, or so I believed. The truth was that by our wedding day, Nathan was already hiding explosive secrets that would have made me reconsider everything. This is the story of how I uncovered my husband's double life and the elaborate steps I took to expose his deception in front of everyone who mattered to us. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely, you know the disorienting feeling of questioning your entire reality. Did I miss the signs? Were there clues I overlooked because I wasn't paying attention? I'm sharing this because I want you to know you're not alone if you've experienced this kind of betrayal. And sometimes, the most empowering thing isn't walking away quietly. It's making sure the truth comes to light in a way that can't be manipulated, denied, or rewritten by the person who shattered your trust. What you're about to witness isn't just a story of revenge. It's about reclaiming my dignity and exposing the lies that stole years of my life, including my chance to make informed decisions about my own future and potential family. Nathan didn't just lie to me. He stole my right to choose my own path with complete information. If you're watching from somewhere around the world where someone has made you question your own worth because of their deception, hit subscribe and share in the comments where you're tuning in from. This channel has become a community of people supporting each other through life's unexpected betrayals, and your story matters here. Tomorrow's video will reveal the surprising discovery I made about Nathan's business trips to Portland, including hotel records that proved he was living a complete double life, so make sure your notifications are turned on so you don't miss it. But for now, let's continue with what happened after I discovered the paternity test that changed everything. David Mercer's office looked nothing like I expected. Instead of the dimly lit, cluttered space depicted in detective shows, his workplace was modern, bright, and meticulously organized. The walls displayed credentials and thank you letters from clients, tastefully framed alongside what appeared to be high-end surveillance equipment catalogs. "Mrs. Reynolds," he greeted me, his handshake firm but not overpowering. "Your friend Renee explained the basics, but I'd like to hear the situation directly from you." For the next 30 minutes, I laid out everything I'd discovered: the paternity test, the payment records, the school photos of Ethan, and the second phone. David took notes without interrupting, his expression remaining neutral in a way that suggested years of practice hearing stories of betrayal. "Based on what you've shared, this appears to be a long-term deception," he said finally. "Not just the child's existence, but the ongoing relationship with the mother, the regular payments, the second phone, the frequent trips to Portland. These suggest active involvement, not just financial support." The clinical way he described it somehow made it worse. This wasn't just a past mistake Nathan was taking responsibility for. It was a parallel life he was actively maintaining. "I need to understand the full extent before your anniversary celebration on Saturday," I explained. "Whatever you can discover about Vanessa Porter and Ethan, their living situation, and exactly what Nathan has told them about his life here in Seattle." David nodded. Given the tight timeline, I'll put my best people on this immediately. Do you have any photos of your husband that might be useful for surveillance? I pulled out my phone and scrolled through recent pictures. Nathan at his company. Picnic. Nathan on our hike last month. Nathan laughing with my parents during their visit. Images of a life I now questioned entirely. What's your goal with this information, Mrs. Reynolds? David asked as he selected and transferred several photos to his system. Are you planning divorce proceedings, or is there another outcome you're hoping for? The question caught me off guard. In the whirlwind of discovery, I hadn't fully processed my endgame beyond the anniversary revelation. I want the truth, I said finally. Complete, unvarnished truth. Nathan's taken away my ability to make informed choices about my own life for 8 years. Before I decide on next steps, I need to understand exactly what I've been living with, and who he really is. David's expression softened slightly. Truth is valuable currency in my line of work. I can help you obtain it, but what you do with it afterward is equally important. I understand, I replied, though I wasn't sure I did fully. Not yet. There's one more thing, I added, pulling out my checkbook. I need this investigation to remain completely confidential. Nathan can't know I'm looking into him. That goes without saying, David assured me. Now, do you have access to your husband's schedule for the next few days? It will help us maximize our surveillance opportunities. I pulled up Nathan's shared calendar on my phone. Another tool of deception, I now realized, since it clearly didn't include his family time. In Portland. He has meetings downtown tomorrow and Thursday. Friday, he's supposedly flying to San Francisco for a morning client meeting before returning for our anniversary weekend. But given everything else I've learned, I have no idea if that's actually true. We'll verify his movements, David promised. I'll have preliminary information for you by tomorrow evening and more comprehensive findings before your Saturday event. As I prepared to leave, David handed me a small device that resembled a USB drive. Voice-activated recorder, he explained. Small enough to hide in a pocket or purse. Washington is a two-party consent state for recordings, so you can't use this as legal evidence, but it might help you understand conversations you have with your husband between now and Saturday. I slipped the device into my purse, feeling like I'd crossed some invisible line. The Sophia of last week would never have considered recording her husband's conversations. But that Sophia had believed in a marriage that didn't actually exist. One final question, David said as he walked me to the door. Do you have any reason to believe Nathan might become volatile if confronted? The question sent an unexpected chill through me. No, I answered automatically, then paused. Actually, I don't know. I thought I knew him completely, but clearly I didn't. Is that something I should be worried about? Just a precaution, David reassured me. We'll factor security considerations into our recommendations for your anniversary event. The drive home gave me time to process the surreal direction my life had taken. 4 days ago, I'd been finalizing floral arrangements and menu selections, excited to celebrate a decade with the man I thought I knew better than anyone. Now, I was working with a private investigator to uncover my husband's secret family before exposing him publicly. My phone rang through the car's Bluetooth system. Nathan. Hey, beautiful. His voice filled the car, sounding relaxed and affectionate. How's the anniversary planning going? The casual deception in his tone made my stomach turn. How many times had he called me with that same warmth in his voice, minutes after speaking with Vanessa or Ethan? Everything's on track, I managed, keeping my voice steady. Just finalized some details with the hotel today. You've always been amazing at this stuff, he said. I'd have just ordered some champagne and called it a day. That's why we're perfect together. You see the details I miss. The irony wasn't lost on me. Yes, I was finally seeing the details he'd worked so hard to keep me from noticing. Anyway, he continued, I'm stuck at the office for another few hours. Don't wait up for dinner. Actually, I improvised, I'm meeting with clients about their lake house renovation. Probably won't be home until late myself. Perfect, he replied, too quickly. Then I won't feel guilty about these reports. Love you, Soph. Love you too, I responded automatically, then added, Oh, Nathan. I was thinking about maybe joining you on your San Francisco trip Friday. It's been ages since we've done a spontaneous getaway. The pause that followed lasted just a beat too long. It would be great, but it's literally just a morning meeting and then right back for our party prep. Not much of a getaway. Maybe next month we could plan something proper? Just a thought, I said lightly. See you tonight. I ended the call and immediately pulled over, my hands shaking too badly to drive. The ease with which he lied, the practiced way he deflected my suggestion. It painted a picture of a man who had perfected the art of deception. The recorder David had given me sat heavily in my purse. I hadn't planned to use it so soon, but Nathan's smooth lies had triggered something in me. Tonight I decided I would begin documenting everything. Because while Nathan thought he was maintaining perfect control over his two separate worlds, he had no idea that in just 4 days, those worlds were going to collide spectacularly. My phone pinged with a text from Renee. How did it go with David? He's on it, I replied. And I think I've decided what's happening at our anniversary party. What do you need from me? She texted back immediately. I took a deep breath and typed, Help me find Vanessa Porter. I think it's time she received a special invitation to our celebration of truth. Because sometimes, the most powerful moment of reckoning isn't delivered through angry accusations. It's orchestrated through careful planning and delivered when the audience includes everyone who needs to witness the truth unfold. That night, I returned to our house, the house I'd lovingly designed and decorated, transforming it from the dated property we'd purchased into a showcase home that had been featured in Seattle Home and Garden last year. Every corner held memories I now questioned. The reading nook where Nathan would sit with his coffee on Sunday mornings. Had he been texting Vanessa while I thought he was reading the news? The kitchen island where we'd shared countless meals. Had he been mentally cataloging stories to share with his son afterward? I wandered through the rooms, seeing our life together through new eyes. Photographs lined the hallway chronicling our decade together, hiking in the Cascades, sailing on Puget Sound, celebrating with friends at countless dinner parties I'd hosted. So many smiles, so many moments that felt genuine. Had any of it been real? In our bedroom, I opened the closet and ran my fingers over Nathan's precisely organized shirts. My design sense complemented his methodical nature, or so I'd thought. Now I recognized his careful organization as necessary compartmentalization. A man living 2 lives needed impeccable systems to keep his lies straight. I pulled out the recorder David had given me and slipped it into the pocket of my robe. Then I methodically began examining the bedroom with fresh eyes, looking for any other evidence Nathan might have hidden. The bedside table held nothing unusual. His dresser contained only the expected items. But when I moved to his closet and began checking pockets, I found a receipt crumpled in his blue blazer, the one he'd worn last weekend when he'd claimed to be golfing with clients. The receipt was from a toy store in Portland, dated last Saturday. Deluxe Astronomy Kit, $89.99 was circled, along with a handwritten note. Perfect for E's birthday. I photographed the receipt with shaking hands. E's birthday. Ethan's birthday. While telling me he was networking with clients, Nathan had actually been shopping for his son's gift. This discovery led me to dig deeper into our finances. Nathan handled most of our banking, another red flag I'd missed, interpreting it as him taking on his share of our household management, rather than as a strategy to hide his double life. I knew our password to the main accounts, but I'd rarely logged in, trusting the summaries Nathan provided. Sitting at my desk, I accessed our joint accounts and began downloading statements from the past 5 years. A pattern quickly emerged. Regular withdrawals, always between $3,000 and $4,000, labeled blandly as investment transfer. These occurred like clockwork, once a month, and always a few days after Nathan's direct deposit hit our account. I calculated quickly, at roughly $3,500 per month for 8 years, Nathan had diverted approximately $336,000 from our marriage to his secret family. Money that could have funded the family we'd discussed having but always seemed to postpone for the right time. Money that could have expanded my business years earlier than I'd been able to. Money that should have been ours, not dedicated, to maintaining his elaborate lie. The magnitude of the deception made me physically ill. I barely made it to the bathroom before emptying the contents of my stomach. As I rinsed my mouth afterward, I caught sight of my reflection. Pale, eyes, hollow with shock. This was trauma, I realized. Not just anger or betrayal, but genuine trauma from having my reality shattered. I heard the garage door open downstairs. Nathan was home. Quickly, I closed the browser tabs, shut down the laptop, and tried to compose myself. The recorder in my pocket felt heavy with purpose. "Soph?" Nathan called up the stairs. "You home?" "Babe?" "In the bedroom," I managed, my voice steadier than I expected. He appeared in the doorway moments later, looking exactly as he always did. Handsome in his tailored suit, tie loosened after a long day, smile crinkling the corners of his eyes. How many times had that same smile greeted Vanessa? Did he call her babe too? "You okay?" he asked, brow furrowing with what appeared to be genuine concern. "You look pale." "Just tired," I lied. "Lot of running around for the anniversary preparations." Nathan sat beside me on the bed, placing his hand on my forehead in a gesture of caring that now felt like another performance. "No fever. Maybe you're coming down with something?" "Maybe," I agreed. "How was your day? Those reports get finished?" "God, don't remind me," he groaned, loosening his tie further. "Finance committee is breathing down my neck about the Henderson portfolio. Nothing I can't handle, but the timing's brutal with San Francisco on Friday." I nodded sympathetically, marveling at how easily the fabrications flowed from him. There was no hesitation, no telltale signs of deception I could detect. Had he always been this practiced a liar? Or had 8 years of maintaining 2 separate lives honed his skills to this frightening level of perfection? "Speaking of Friday," I ventured, "are you sure you need to go? The party's Saturday night and there's still so much to finalize." Nathan's expression shifted to one of mild irritation. "Soph, we've been over this. It's one morning meeting. Back by mid-afternoon. Plenty of time for whatever last-minute details need handling." He softened, squeezing my hand. 10 years deserves celebrating properly. I wouldn't miss it for anything. The irony of his emphasis on the milestone nearly made me laugh. 10 years of marriage, 8 of which included active deception about a child he'd fathered. "You're right," I agreed. 10 years is significant. It makes you reflect on everything that's happened during that time. Something in my tone must have alerted him, because Nathan's gaze sharpened slightly. "Anything specific on your mind?" I gestured vaguely toward the hallway with its timeline of photos. "Just thinking about all we've experienced. The trips, the career milestones, the house." I paused. "The paths not taken." "Paths not taken?" he echoed. "Children," I said simply. "Remember how we always said we'd start trying after 5 years? Then it became, when the business is more established. Then, when you make partner." I looked directly into his eyes. 10 years gone, and we never seriously revisited that conversation. Nathan's expression clouded. "I thought we were on the same page about that. Your business needed your focus. My career was demanding." "And now?" I pressed. "We're both established, financially secure. What's the reason now, Nathan?" He stood abruptly, creating physical distance. Is this really what you want to discuss 4 days before our anniversary celebration? Whether we've missed some arbitrary reproductive deadline? The deflection was masterful, shifting from his deception to making me feel unreasonable for asking legitimate questions. Another tactic I now recognized in retrospect. You're right, I conceded, pressing the recorder deeper into my pocket. Bad timing. I think I'll take a bath and turn in early. Relief visibly washed over him. Good idea. I've got some emails to finish anyway. He kissed the top of my head, a gesture that had once felt tender, but now seemed designed to avoid my eyes. Love you, Soph. Love you too, I responded automatically, the words hollow. After Nathan retreated to his home office, I ran the bath but didn't get in. Instead, I returned to my laptop and began a new search. Vanessa Porter, Portland, Oregon. The results were limited but promising. A LinkedIn profile for a Vanessa Porter who worked as an elementary school art teacher in Portland. Her profile photo showed a woman with warm brown eyes and curly hair pulled back in a professional style. She looked kind, accomplished. Not the homewrecker I'd initially imagined in my anger, but possibly another victim of Nathan's compartmentalized life. I sent the link to David Mercer with a brief message. Potential match. Can you confirm if this is our Vanessa? His response came minutes later. Already on it. Preliminary surveillance in place. We'll update tomorrow with confirmation and details. I closed my laptop and finally sank into the bath, letting the hot water ease the physical tension while my mind continued working through the implications of everything I'd discovered. The recorder sat on the bath mat, still running, capturing the sound of occasional tears splashing into the water, evidence of the genuine grief I was experiencing for the marriage I'd thought I had. By morning, I'd made a decision. This wasn't just about exposing Nathan's lies at our anniversary party. It was about giving Vanessa and Ethan the truth they deserved as well. Whatever Nathan had told them about his life in Seattle, about me, about our marriage, they had been manipulated just as thoroughly as I had been. As the first light of dawn filtered through our bedroom windows, I watched Nathan sleeping peacefully beside me. A man without apparent conscience who could maintain elaborate deceptions without losing a minute of rest. In 3 days, his carefully constructed worlds would collide spectacularly. But first, I needed to understand exactly what those worlds consisted of, and who else had been damaged by his lies. Morning brought a text from David Mercer. Information. Coming in. Can you meet at 2 p.m.? I stared at the message while Nathan showered, preparing for his day of supposed meetings downtown. My interior design clients had been rescheduled or temporarily handed off to my assistant Mia, a move that would have been unthinkable a week ago when I prided myself on personal service. But priorities had shifted dramatically. What's on your agenda today? Nathan asked casually, emerging from the bathroom with a towel wrapped around his waist. His body was still trim and athletic at 38, a fact he attributed to regular gym sessions that I now wondered were actually visits to Portland. Final tastings with the caterer, I improvised, then meetings with the florist and photographer. You're amazing, he said, kissing my forehead. Most women would have just booked a restaurant. You're creating an entire experience. The compliment turned my stomach. Yes, I was creating an experience, just not the romantic one he was expecting. What time do you think you'll be home? I asked, working to keep my voice neutral. Probably late again, he sighed, selecting a charcoal suit from his closet. Quarterly reviews this week. Timing's terrible with the anniversary, but... He shrugged as if to say, What can you do? No problem, I assured him. Gives me more time to work on your surprise. His eyes lit up with genuine seeming interest. A surprise? Any hints? I managed a mysterious smile. Let's just say it's something you never saw coming. After Nathan left, I spent the morning methodically documenting our finances, downloading statements and tracking the pattern of withdrawals. His deception wasn't just emotional, it was financial fraud against our marriage. I created a spreadsheet calculating the total amount diverted, including interest it would have earned had it remained in our joint investments. At 1:30, I headed to David Mercer's office. My stomach knotted with anticipation. Whatever he'd discovered would shape my next steps. His assistant ushered me immediately into a conference room where David waited with a folder and laptop. His expression was professionally neutral, but something in his eyes suggested significant findings. "Mrs. Reynolds," he greeted me. "We've been able to verify quite a bit of information in a short time. My team is efficient." "What have you found?" I asked, not bothering with pleasantries. David opened the folder and placed several surveillance photos on the table. These were taken yesterday evening in Portland's Selwood neighborhood. I stared at the images, each one delivering a fresh blow. Nathan, my husband, walking up the steps of a modest craftsman bungalow. Nathan kneeling to embrace a young boy with a backpack. Ethan, looking older than in the school photos I'd found. And most devastatingly, Nathan with his arm around a woman's waist. Vanessa, as they all entered the house together. They look like— I couldn't finish the sentence. "A family," David completed gently. "Yes, that appears to be the case." He placed another set of photos on the table. "These are from this morning. Your husband left your house at 7:30 a.m., as you know. These show him boarding the 8:15 train to Portland, not driving to his office. Downtown, as he told you. I checked my watch, just past 2 p.m. He's in Portland right now? Not at quarterly reviews?" "Correct. One of my investigators observed him meeting the boy, Ethan, at school for what appeared to be a lunch outing, then returning him to classes before heading to the house in Selwood." The room seemed to tilt slightly. Nathan hadn't even gone. "To work today. The quarterly reviews, the late meetings, all fabricated to spend time with his other family." "There's more," David said, turning his laptop toward me. "We've done preliminary background research on Vanessa Porter. She's 36, teaches art at Selwood Elementary, the same school Ethan attends. She's lived in that house for approximately 7 years, and property records show it was purchased with a substantial down payment right around that time. Using funds from our accounts," I supplied. The timeline matched perfectly with when the regular withdrawals had begun. "Most likely," David agreed. "Now, regarding their relationship status, Vanessa Porter has identified herself as a single mother on school records and social media. However, neighbors report that your husband is a regular presence. One particularly chatty neighbor told my investigator that Mr. Reynolds visits several weekends a month and for longer periods during school holidays." "Mr. Reynolds?" I repeated, the implications sinking in. "He uses his real name there?" "Yes, though we haven't confirmed whether Vanessa and Ethan use the Reynolds surname or if they maintain Porter. What we do know is that locals recognize him as a familiar presence in the neighborhood, not an occasional visitor." David hesitated, seeming to weigh his next words carefully. "Mrs. Reynolds, there's something else you should know. According to the same neighbor, your husband has described his situation as being complicated. He's apparently told people he's separated from his wife in Seattle but unable to finalize the divorce due to financial entanglements." The shock of this revelation hit harder than anything before. Nathan wasn't just maintaining a separate relationship, he was actively misrepresenting our marriage as failed, positioning himself as unavailable but committed to Vanessa and Ethan. "Separated," I echoed hollowly. "For how long, according to this fiction he's created?" The neighbor wasn't specific, but indicated it had been the status quo for years. Years. While I'd been planning dinner parties, supporting his career, and designing our dream home, Nathan had been portraying me as an obstacle to his true happiness, a soon-to-be ex-wife he simply hadn't gotten around to divorcing. "There's one more thing," David said, pulling out a final document. Financial records show that 2 years ago, your husband established a separate bank account in Portland with Vanessa Porter listed as having power of attorney. Monthly transfers from an account in Seattle fund it regularly. So she has access to money he's diverting from our marriage, I concluded. Yes, but the arrangement suggests something more established than simply child support payments. This looks more like shared finances, I finished. A family account. David nodded solemnly. My assessment exactly. I sat in silence for several minutes, absorbing the magnitude of Nathan's deception. This wasn't just about a child from a previous relationship he'd hidden. He was actively living as a part-time husband and father in Portland, presenting himself as committed to Vanessa while merely delayed in ending his marriage to me. I need to meet her, I said finally. David's eyebrows rose. Are you sure that's wise? In my experience, this isn't just about exposing Nathan anymore, I interrupted. Vanessa deserves to know the truth too. He's been lying to both of us for years. And if she already knows about you? If she's a willing participant in this deception? I considered this possibility. Then I'll adjust my approach accordingly. But I need to see for myself. David's expression remained concerned. If you're determined to do this, we should plan it carefully. Your husband is currently in Portland, but scheduled to return to Seattle this evening according to the train tickets he's purchased. That gives us a window when you could potentially meet Vanessa without him present. Today? The prospect of confronting her so soon sent adrenaline coursing through me. It would be possible, David confirmed. I could arrange for a car to take you to Portland immediately. You could be there by early evening when the boy would likely be home from school. But Mrs. Reynolds, I strongly advise having a clear objective. For this meeting, what exactly do you hope to accomplish? The question gave me pause. What did I want from a confrontation with Vanessa? Understanding, I said finally. I need to know if she's a victim or an accomplice. I need to know what Nathan has told her about me, about our marriage, and monthly transfers from an account in Seattle fund it regularly. So she has access to money he's diverting from our marriage, I concluded. Yes, but the arrangement suggests something more established than simply child support payments. This looks more like shared finances, I finished. A family account. David nodded solemnly. My assessment exactly. I sat in silence for several minutes, absorbing the magnitude of Nathan's deception. This wasn't just about a child from a previous relationship he'd hidden. He was actively living as a part-time husband and father in Portland, presenting himself as committed to Vanessa while merely delayed in ending his marriage to me. I need to meet her, I said finally. David's eyebrows rose. Are you sure that's wise? In my experience, this isn't just about exposing Nathan anymore, I interrupted. Vanessa deserves to know the truth too. He's been lying to both of us for years. And if she already knows about you? If she's a willing participant in this deception? I considered this possibility. Then I'll adjust my approach accordingly. But I need to see for myself. David's expression remained concerned. If you're determined to do this, we should plan it carefully. Your husband is currently in Portland, but scheduled to return to Seattle this evening according to the train tickets he's purchased. That gives us a window when you could potentially meet Vanessa without him present. Today? The prospect of confronting her so soon sent adrenaline coursing through me. It would be possible, David confirmed. I could arrange for a car to take you to Portland immediately. You could be there by early evening when the boy would likely be home from school. But Mrs. Reynolds, I strongly advise having a clear objective. For this meeting, what exactly do you hope to accomplish? The question gave me pause. What did I want from a confrontation with Vanessa? Understanding, I said finally. I need to know if she's a victim or an accomplice. I need to know what Nathan has told her about me, about our marriage, and I hesitated. I need to see this other life he's built with my own eyes, not just in photographs. David nodded, reaching for his phone. I'll make the arrangements. While I do, take some time to decide exactly how you want to approach her. First impressions matter, especially in emotionally charged situations like this one. As David stepped out to coordinate my transportation, I sat staring at the surveillance photos. In them, Nathan looked completely at ease, a man comfortable in his surroundings, greeting his son, embracing his partner. There was no hesitation, no furtiveness that might suggest he felt he was doing something wrong. My phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. Meeting's running long. Probably won't be home until after dinner. Don't wait up. The audacity of the lie, sent while he was actually spending the day with his other family, made something harden within. I typed back, "No problem. Having dinner with Renee to finalize some anniversary details. Sleep well." David returned with confirmation of my transportation. "The car will be ready in 20 minutes. My associate will drive you to Portland and wait while you conduct your conversation with Ms. Porter. He'll ensure your safety and bring you back to Seattle afterward." "Thank you," I said, gathering the photos and documents he'd shared. "There's one more thing I need to know before I go. The trip Nathan has planned for Friday, the supposed San Francisco client meeting. Have your people been able to verify whether that's legitimate?" David's expression confirmed my suspicions before he spoke. "There is no San Francisco trip. Mrs. Reynolds. He's purchased train tickets to Portland for Friday morning. A reservation exists under his name at the Riverside Hotel in Portland for Friday night, a suite. Based on previous patterns, it appears he's planning to spend Friday night with Vanessa and Ethan, then return to Seattle Saturday morning for your anniversary celebration." The pieces clicked into place with devastating clarity. Nathan had scheduled a pre-anniversary celebration with his other family before attending our milestone event. The compartmentalization was breathtaking in its calculation. "Mrs. Reynolds," David said gently, "are you still planning to proceed with your anniversary party after everything you've learned?" I met his gaze steadily. "Absolutely. But it's evolved into something different than what I originally planned. Now it's about truth. Making sure everyone involved finally sees reality clearly, without Nathan's manipulations obscuring it." As I gathered my purse to leave, David offered one final piece of advice. "When you meet Vanessa Porter today, remember that anger directed at her may be misdirected. Based on what we've uncovered, there's a significant possibility that she believes herself to be in an exclusive, committed relationship with a man who's separated from his wife and simply waiting for the right time to finalize his divorce." His words reinforced my evolving understanding of the situation. Vanessa might not be my enemy. She might be another woman who had been thoroughly deceived by the same man who had betrayed me. "I understand," I assured him. "This meeting isn't about confrontation. It's about discovering the full truth, whatever that turns out to be." The drive to Portland took just under 3 hours, giving me time to process everything I'd learned and prepare for the confrontation ahead. David's associate, a former military man named Kevin who spoke little but exuded competence, occasionally glanced at me in the rearview mirror as if assessing my emotional state. "We're about 20 minutes out, Mrs. Reynolds," he finally said, as we crossed the Columbia River into Portland. "Do you have a plan for this meeting?" "Yes and no," I admitted. "I know what I need to learn, but how I approach it will depend on how she reacts to seeing me." "If I may offer a suggestion," Kevin said carefully, "in my experience, leading with accusations rarely produces honest conversation. People become defensive." "I appreciate the advice," I replied, "but I'm not planning to accuse her of anything. For all I know, she's as much a victim of Nathan's lies as I am." Kevin nodded approvingly. "We'll park a few houses down. I'll remain with the vehicle but within sight of the residence. If you need assistance, just step outside and signal." As we turned onto the tree-lined street of Vanessa's neighborhood, anxiety knotted my stomach. The modest houses with their well-tended gardens spoke of middle-class stability, a far cry from our upscale Queen Anne property, but charming in their authenticity. We passed Nathan's silver Lexus parked in front of a blue Craftsman bungalow, confirming he was still there. My courage nearly failed me at the sight. "Keep driving," I instructed Kevin. "He's still there. We need to wait." We circled the neighborhood for another hour, parking occasionally with a view of the house. Just as the sun began its descent, I watched Nathan emerge with Ethan. They tossed a baseball back and forth in the front yard for a few minutes before Nathan pulled the boy into a tight hug, ruffled his hair, and climbed into his car. "That's my husband," I said unnecessarily. "And his son." Kevin remained silent, allowing me the dignity of processing the surreal moment without commentary. We watched Nathan's car disappear around the corner, presumably heading toward the Tow train station for his return journey to Seattle, to me, carrying the fiction of his day of business meetings. "Now," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "Let's go." Kevin parked several houses away as promised. Before exiting, I checked my appearance in the compact mirror. Pale but composed, no trace of the emotional turbulence within visible on my face. I'd dressed intentionally in a professional navy sheath dress and blazer, the kind of outfit I'd wear to meet potential clients. Polished but not intimidating. The walk to Vanessa's front door felt simultaneously endless and too brief. My knuckles had barely touched the wood when the door swung open, revealing the woman I'd seen in photographs. Curly hair now loose around her shoulders, kind eyes, a puzzled expression forming as she registered the presence of a stranger. "Vanessa Porter?" I asked, though I knew perfectly well who she was. "Yes," she confirmed, wariness creeping into her expression. "Can I help you?" I took a deep breath. "My name is Sophia Reynolds. I believe we need to talk." The color drained from her face as the significance of my name registered. Her eyes darted past me to the street, perhaps checking whether Nathan had returned. "He just left," I said quietly. "He's on his way back to Seattle, to our home." Her hand gripped the door frame, knuckles whitening. You're Nathan's wife." "Yes, though I'm curious what he's told you about me." Confusion clouded her features. "Ex-wife," she corrected uncertainly. "Or almost ex. You've been separated for years." Just as David had discovered. I nodded sympathetically. "May I come in? I think we both deserve a conversation that isn't rushed or conducted on your doorstep." Hesitation flickered across her face, followed by resignation. She stepped back, opening the door wider. "Ethan's in his room doing homework. I'd prefer he not overhear whatever this is." I followed her into a modestly furnished living room. Children's artwork adorned the walls alongside framed photographs, many featuring Nathan with Vanessa and Ethan in various settings, hiking, at the beach, celebrating birthdays, a parallel life documented in plain sight. "Is this some kind of intimidation tactic?" Vanessa asked once we were seated, her voice gaining strength. "Because if you're here to threaten me about the divorce settlement—" "Divorce settlement?" I echoed. "Vanessa, there is no divorce. There never has been. Nathan and I have been continuously married for 10 years. This Saturday, we're hosting our anniversary celebration with 50 of our closest friends and family." Her expression shifted from defensive to confused, then to dawning horror. That's not possible. He's been separated from his wife in Seattle for years. The divorce has been held up because of property complications and business entanglements." "I'm afraid that's not true," I said gently, opening my purse to extract copies of the documents David had provided. "This is our most recent joint tax filing. These are photographs from our holiday party 3 months ago. And this," I placed our anniversary invitation on the coffee table, "is what 50 people will be receiving tomorrow morning for our celebration this weekend." Vanessa's hands trembled as she examined the evidence. "I don't understand." she whispered. We've been together for 8 years. He's Ethan's father. He's here every week, sometimes more. I know, I acknowledged. I just found out about you. And Ethan 4 days ago. Nathan has been living a complete double life, lying to both of us. She shook her head vehemently. No, that's not. He wouldn't. Her eyes fell on a photograph of Nathan and me from Christmas. How could he possibly maintain all these years? His business trips, I suggested. The client meetings. The conferences. For me, those were the times he was supposedly working. For you, those were the times he had to be in Seattle to handle business and maintain appearances until the divorce was finalized, she completed, realization dawning in her eyes. Oh my God. I watched as Vanessa's world imploded just as mine had days earlier. The same disbelief, the same desperate search for an alternative explanation, the same crushing acceptance as evidence mounted beyond denial. The house payments, she said suddenly. He sends money for Ethan and contributes to the mortgage. He said it was from his separate accounts, that your financial entanglements didn't affect his ability to support us. That money came from our joint accounts, I clarified. Approximately $336,000 over 8 years, withdrawn in monthly increments and labeled as investment transfers. Vanessa pressed her hands to her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks. I never would have. If I'd known he was still married, actually married. I'm not that person. I wouldn't destroy another woman's marriage. I believed her. The shock and horror in her eyes couldn't be faked. I know, I assured her, which is why I came to you directly instead of just confronting Nathan. I needed to understand whether you were complicit or another victim of his manipulation. She wiped her tears with shaking hands. Ethan adores him. Nathan never missed a school play, a baseball game, a parent-teacher conference. How could someone show up consistently for 8 years while living a complete lie? The question had haunted me as well, the sheer dedication required to maintain such an elaborate deception for so many years. The mental compartmentalization was almost pathological. Vanessa, I said carefully, I need to ask you something important. What has Nathan told you about his plans? About your future together? She gave a bitter laugh. That once the divorce was finalized, we could finally be a proper family. Maybe have another child. Maybe get married. Though he's been hesitant about rushing into another marriage after his first one failed. Her eyes widened at a new realization. He was never going to divorce you, was he? This was never going to be resolved. I don't think so, I admitted. I think he intended to maintain both relationships indefinitely. The perfect wife advancing his social standing in Seattle, the devoted partner and father in Portland. He created an unsolvable problem, the perpetually complicated divorce, to explain why your situation couldn't progress further. Just then, the door opened down the hallway and a young boy, Ethan, appeared briefly before noticing me and retreating shyly. Mom? He called. I finished my math. Vanessa quickly wiped her eyes. Good job, honey. I'll check it in a minute. Why don't you start your reading now? Okay, he agreed, casting a curious glance at me before disappearing back into his room. The sight of him, Nathan's son, with the same hazel eyes and dimpled smile, made the situation painfully concrete. This wasn't just about Nathan's betrayal of our marriage. It was about a child who believed his father would someday make their family complete. What are you going to do? Vanessa asked quietly once Ethan was out of earshot. I haven't decided everything yet, I admitted. But I know this Saturday's anniversary party will become something very different than what Nathan is expecting. Vanessa studied me, a new resolve hardening her features. Whatever you're planning, I want to help. He didn't just lie to you, he lied to me, to Ethan, to everyone who knows us. 8 years of my life spent waiting for a future that was never going to happen. You'd be willing to confront him publicly? I asked, surprised by her vehemence. For Ethan's sake, I need to handle this carefully, she acknowledged. But yes, I'm done protecting Nathan's fiction. Tell me what you're thinking. For the next hour, Vanessa and I compared notes, filling in gaps in each other's understanding of Nathan's elaborately constructed double life. The picture that emerged was of a man who had methodically created and maintained two completely separate existences, tailoring his lies to fit what each of us most wanted to hear. To me, he'd portrayed himself as fully committed to our marriage, but hesitant about children until our careers were more established. To Vanessa, he'd presented himself as a devoted father, trapped in a loveless marriage he was working to exit gracefully. He's supposed to be here Friday night, Vanessa revealed. He told me he has a special evening planned for us, a stay at the Riverside Hotel, before he needs to handle business obligations on Saturday. Those business obligations being our anniversary celebration, I added. He purchased a return ticket to Seattle for Saturday morning. Vanessa's expression hardened. So he was planning to spend Friday night with us, then celebrate 10 years of marriage with you the next day. The audacity is almost impressive. Almost, I agreed grimly. As our conversation continued, a plan began to take shape, one that would ensure Nathan couldn't manipulate either of us any longer. By the time I rose to leave, Vanessa and I had formed an unlikely alliance born of shared betrayal and a mutual desire for truth. Are you sure about this? I asked as we finalized the details. Once we do this, there's no going back. Ethan will eventually have to know the truth. Vanessa nodded, a new determination in her eyes. He deserves better than to build his life on his father's lies. We all do. As I walked back to where Kevin waited in the car, I felt oddly lighter despite the emotional intensity of the conversation. Having faced Vanessa, the woman I'd initially imagined as my enemy, I'd instead found a partner in uncovering the full truth of Nathan's deception. How did it go? Kevin asked as I slid into the back seat. Better than expected, I replied, watching Vanessa's house recede in the side mirror as we pulled away. I think I just found the most powerful ally possible for what comes next. Because while Nathan believed he was masterfully managing his double life, preparing to balance his anniversary celebration with a pre-anniversary evening with his other family, he had no idea that the two women he'd deceived were now comparing notes and coordinating their response. His carefully separated worlds were about to collide spectacularly, and there would be nowhere for him to hide. The return drive to Seattle gave me time to process my conversation with Vanessa and finalize the details of our coordinated plan. By the time Kevin dropped me off at home, it was nearly midnight. Nathan's car was in the garage, and lights glowed softly from our bedroom window. He was home, likely believing I was still out with Renee as I'd claimed in my text. I paused in the driveway, steeling myself for the performance ahead. For the next 3 days, I would need to play the role of devoted wife preparing for our special celebration while secretly orchestrating his public revelation. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was now the one with secrets, compartmentalizing my knowledge just as Nathan had done for years. Slipping quietly into the house, I made a show of trying not to wake him in case he was still awake. I needn't have bothered. Nathan was sound asleep, his face peaceful despite having spent the day with his other family before returning to his primary home. How could someone sleep so soundly while maintaining such massive deceptions? The disconnect was almost pathological. I changed in the bathroom, avoiding looking at the marital bed we'd shared for 10 years. Instead of joining him, I took a pillow and blanket to the guest room, unable to bear the thought of sleeping beside him now. If he noticed my absence in the morning, I could blame insomnia and not wanting to disturb him. Sleep eluded me as I replayed my conversation with Vanessa, comparing the fiction Nathan had created for her with the reality of our marriage. The calculated nature of his deception was staggering. He'd told her I was difficult about the divorce settlement, which, Conveniently explained why the process dragged on for years. He'd painted himself as a dedicated father, trapped by financial entanglements with an unreasonable ex-wife. A sympathetic narrative designed to ensure Vanessa would continue waiting patiently for a resolution that would never come. My phone buzzed softly with a text from Renee. "How did it go with her? Do I need to come over?" "Not tonight," I replied. "I'll fill you in tomorrow. Meeting you for breakfast at 9? "I'll be there. Are you okay?" I considered the question. Was I okay? The foundation of my life had collapsed. My marriage was revealed as an elaborate lie, and I was preparing to publicly expose the man I'd loved for a decade. "No," I typed honestly. "But I will be." Morning arrived too quickly. I showered and dressed in the guest room before Nathan awoke, not yet prepared to maintain my facade during casual morning conversation. I left a note on the kitchen counter. "Early meeting with florist, then breakfast with Renee. See you tonight." And slipped out while the house was still quiet. Instead of heading directly to meet Renee, I made a detour to our bank. Armed. With our marriage certificate and joint account documentation, I met with the branch manager to discuss urgent changes to our financial arrangements. "Mrs. Reynolds?" the manager greeted me. "How can I help you today?" "I need to protect my assets immediately," I explained, maintaining a calm exterior despite the circumstances. "I have reason to believe my husband has been misappropriating funds from our joint accounts for several years." The manager's professional demeanor didn't slip, but her eyes registered concern. "I understand. Let me walk you through your options." For the next hour, we restructured my financial portfolio. I couldn't legally touch Nathan's personal accounts or earnings, but I could protect my business assets and the inheritance from my grandmother that formed a substantial portion of our joint investments. By the time I left, I had established new accounts under my name only, transferred my legitimately owned assets, and placed security holds requiring dual authorization for any major withdrawals from remaining joint accounts. The financial shield in place, I headed to meet Renee at our favorite breakfast spot. Her eyes widened as I approached, no doubt registering the effects of my sleepless night. "That bad?" she asked as I slid into the booth across from her. "Worse," I admitted, then spent the next 30 minutes recounting my meeting with Vanessa and everything I'd learned about Nathan's elaborate double life. Renee listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from shock to anger to determination. When I finished, she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "That manipulative bastard," she said finally. "So what's the plan now? Are you still going through with the anniversary party?" "Absolutely," I confirmed, lowering my voice even though we were alone in our corner. "But it's evolved into something different. Vanessa and I have coordinated our approach. I outlined the framework of what we'd planned, a public revelation. That would ensure Nathan couldn't continue his deceptions with either of us." Renee's eyes widened as she grasped the scale of what we intended. "That's nuclear," she said when I finished. "But honestly, it's exactly what he deserves. What do you need from me?" "Several things," I replied, pulling out a list I'd prepared. "First, can you contact the guests on this sheet? They're the ones I'm closest to, people who will stand by me regardless. Tell them there's been a slight change to the program, but not to mention it to anyone else." "Consider it done," Renee agreed, studying the list. "What else?" "I need you to meet with the hotel event coordinator this afternoon. The anniversary slideshow we planned needs some significant editing." Renee's smile turned predatory. "I'm excellent at slideshows. What exactly are we adding to it?" I detailed the evidence we would incorporate: the documentation of Nathan's double life, financial records of his systematic diversion of funds, and key photographs illustrating the parallel families he'd maintained. "We'll need to be careful about how we present Ethan," I added. "He's innocent in all this, and both Vanessa and I want to protect him as much as possible while still exposing the truth." "Of course," Renee agreed. Children first, always. But Nathan? He gets everything he deserves. Our waitress arrived. With coffee, momentarily pausing our plotting. Once she departed, Renee leaned forward again. What about your in-laws? And yours? How are you handling family in all this? I'd given this considerable thought during my sleepless night. I've called my parents. They're flying in early, arriving tomorrow instead of Saturday morning. I've told them there's a situation but not the details. They'll be there to support me regardless. And his parents? Sibling? That's trickier, I acknowledged. They've always adored me, but blood is blood. Nathan's sister, Diane, might stand. With me? She's had her suspicions about him for years. But his parents? They've put him on a pedestal since childhood. I'm preparing for them to take his side. Renee nodded thoughtfully. Better to be prepared for the worst. What about the venue security, if this gets volatile? Already addressed, I assured her. I've upgraded our package to include additional staff, ostensibly for the surprise entertainment portion of the evening. After breakfast, I headed to my office to manage the business aspects that couldn't wait, despite my personal crisis. My assistant Mia had handled most client communications, but several design decisions needed my direct input. Everything okay? Mia asked cautiously, clearly sensing my distraction. You've rescheduled more meetings this week than in the entire 5 years I've worked for you. I considered how much to share with her. Mia wasn't just an employee. She'd become a friend over the years, and she'd worked closely with Nathan on the investment banking he'd done for my business. Not really, I admitted. But it will be after Saturday. Can you hold things together until then? Her eyes narrowed slightly. Of course. And if you need anything at all, just say the word. Actually, I said, an idea forming. There is something. Nathan's financial records for the business, the ones he manages for tax purposes. Do we have copies here, or only at the house? We should have everything, Mia confirmed, moving to the filing cabinet. I always insist on backup copies of all financial documents. Why? What are you looking for? Discrepancies, I said simply. Things that don't add up. Understanding dawned in her eyes. Mia had experienced her own painful divorce 2 years earlier after discovering her husband's infidelity. Say no more. Give me a few hours with these, and I'll find anything that looks suspicious. With Mia focused on the business finances, I turned my attention to the personal aspects of our revelation plan. I needed to gather key items that would make Nathan's double life undeniable to our assembled guests. My first step was to extract and organize the evidence David Mercer had provided: the surveillance photos of Nathan with Vanessa and Ethan, property records of the Portland home, financial trail of diverted funds, and travel records showing the pattern of his business trips. Next, I accessed our home computer, searching directories I rarely explored. In a folder labeled Tax Documentation 2016, I found a subfolder titled eSchool, containing dozens of photographs of Ethan through the years. First day of kindergarten, baseball games, birthday parties. Nathan had hidden evidence of his son in plain sight, disguised as boring financial records I'd never have reason to examine. I downloaded everything to a secure cloud account I'd created, then to a USB drive that would become part of our presentation materials. Throughout this process, I maintained text communication with Vanessa, who was conducting her own evidence gathering in Portland. Found Nathan's second phone charger hidden in Ethan's bookshelf, she messaged. Also birthday cards addressed to Dad going back years, photographing everything. Perfect, I replied. Any luck with the emails? Yes, forwarding them now. He's been sending similar messages to both of us, some almost identical. The emails she sent made my stomach turn. Nathan had used the same phrases, the same terms of endearment, the same promises to both of us. Even his complaints were mirrored, telling Vanessa he was exhausted from dealing with difficult clients in Seattle while telling me he was drained from challenging accounts in Portland. The calculated parallelism of his deceptions was almost artistic in its thoroughness. By mid-afternoon, I'd compiled a devastating dossier documenting Nathan's double life. Renee texted confirmation that she'd met with the hotel coordinator and updated the anniversary slideshow with our new materials, and Mia had flagged several concerning patterns in the business finances that suggested Nathan might have been skimming, more than I'd initially realized. The pieces were falling into place for Saturday's revelation. But first, I had to navigate 2 more days of pretending nothing had changed, including tonight's dinner with Nathan, who believed I remained blissfully ignorant of his deception. As I drove home to prepare for this performance, my phone rang. "Vanessa. There's something else you should know," she said without preamble. "I've been going through Ethan's baby book, and I found the original birth certificate. Nathan is listed as the father, but there's something important about the timing." "What is it?" I asked, pulling over to focus on the conversation. "Ethan was born 7 months after Nathan married you. He wasn't conceived before your relationship, as I'd assumed. He was conceived after your wedding." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Not only had Nathan hidden Ethan's existence, but the child had been conceived during our marriage. The ultimate betrayal from the very beginning of our life together. "I'm so sorry," Vanessa continued, her voice breaking. "I had no idea you were already married when Ethan was. I would never have." "It's not your fault," I assured her, my voice steady despite the fresh wave of pain. "This is on Nathan, not you. It just makes what we're doing even more necessary." After ending the call, I sat in my parked car, processing this new information. Nathan's deception hadn't developed gradually over time. It had been fundamental to our marriage from the start. Everything, from our wedding vows to our 10th anniversary plans, had been built on a foundation of lies. With this final piece of evidence added to our dossier, I was more certain than ever about the path forward. The truth needed to come to light, not just for my sake or for Vanessa's, but for everyone who had been drawn into Nathan's web of deception over the past decade. Saturday couldn't come soon enough. Dinner with Nathan that evening required the performance of a lifetime. I prepared his favorite meal, herb-crusted salmon with roasted vegetables, and opened a bottle of the Pinot Noir we'd discovered on our trip to Oregon's Willamette Valley 3 years ago. A trip that, I now realized, had likely included a secret detour to visit his Portland family. "This is unexpected," Nathan commented as he entered the kitchen, loosening his tie. "What's the occasion?" "Just a preview of the anniversary celebrations," I replied, managing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "A private moment before the big event." He moved behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist and kissing my neck, a gesture that once would have filled me with warmth but now made my skin crawl. I forced myself not to stiffen at his touch. "How were the quarterly reviews?" I asked, strategically referencing the lie he'd told about his whereabouts. "Brutal," he sighed, reaching for his wine glass. "The finance committee keeps moving. Goalposts. But I think we made progress." The ease with which he elaborated on his fictional day was chilling. He added specific details about challenges with particular accounts, names of colleagues who'd supported his position, even a supposedly humorous exchange with his boss. The fabrication was comprehensive and delivered without a single tell. No nervous gestures, no avoided eye contact, nothing to suggest he was creating an entire day's events from thin air. "You seem tense," he noted as we sat down to eat. "Anniversary. Planning getting to be too much?" "Just want everything to be perfect," I replied. "It's not every day we celebrate a decade together." 10 years, he mused, raising his glass in a toast. "Best decision I ever made." I clinked my glass against his, bile rising in my throat. "To honesty and commitment," I said pointedly, watching his face for any reaction. There was none. Nathan smiled warmly, completely missing or ignoring my barb. To us. Throughout dinner, I asked casual questions designed to trap him in his lies. How was traffic coming back from downtown? Had he managed to resolve the situation with the Henderson account he'd mentioned yesterday? Was his Friday meeting in San Francisco still on the calendar? Each question was met with a detailed, consistent response that built upon his previous fabrications. The skill required to maintain such elaborate fictions without contradiction was almost admirable in its pathology. I should be back from San Francisco by mid-afternoon Saturday, he assured me, helping clear the plates. Plenty of time to get ready for the party. Perfect, I agreed. Though I was thinking, since you'll be rushed, why don't you just meet me at the hotel? I'll bring your tux and everything you'll need. Nathan considered this. That might work better. The flight lands at 2:30, so I'd have to hurry home and back downtown during weekend traffic. If you're already there setting up. Exactly. I nodded. Just come straight to the Grand Lakeview. I'll text you which room we're assigned for preparation. You always think of everything, he said admiringly. That's why we make such a great team. The irony of his statement almost broke my composure. If he only knew what I was actually planning while appearing to handle anniversary details. Oh, I added casually. Your parents called earlier. They're arriving Friday evening instead of Saturday morning. Thought you'd want to know. Nathan frowned slightly. They didn't mention changing their plans when I spoke with them yesterday. Last-minute decision, apparently. Your mother wants to help with any final preparations. This fabrication served two purposes: testing whether Nathan would check this information with his parents, and planting the idea that his movements on Friday might be observed by family members. I'll give them a call tomorrow, he said, concern, flickering briefly across his features. Make sure they don't interfere with anything you've planned. After dinner, Nathan retreated to his home office, ostensibly to finish work, but likely to communicate with Vanessa. The moment he left, I texted David Mercer. Need tracking on N's devices. Is this possible? His response came quickly. Can be arranged. Bring his phone and laptop to office tomorrow if possible. An opportunity arose sooner than expected when Nathan emerged from his office an hour later. I'm heading out for a drink with Phil, he announced, referencing a colleague I'd met at several company functions. Won't be late. He's having issues with his divorce and needs to vent. Another lie. According to David's surveillance, Phil was currently on vacation in Hawaii, a fact I could easily verify from Phil's social media posts, but chose not to mention. Take your time, I encouraged. I have plenty to keep me busy with anniversary details. The moment Nathan's car pulled out of the driveway, I moved with purpose. First, I located his personal laptop that he'd left charging in the office. Creating a clone of his hard drive would take time I didn't have, but I could accomplish something equally useful. I installed the tracking software David had sent to my email, following his detailed instructions for hiding it within system files, where Nathan would never detect it. Next, I searched his desk methodically. The center drawer revealed a small leather notebook, his personal planner where he recorded appointments not listed in his digital calendar. The system was immediately clear. Entries marked with an S were Seattle activities, while those with a P designated Portland commitments. The upcoming weekend was marked with both P, Riverside Hotel, 7 p.m. on Friday, and S, anniversary, 6 p.m. on Saturday. I photographed every page, documenting months of his double scheduling. Each entry represented another carefully orchestrated deception. Another day of calculated lies. My phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. He just called Ethan to say goodnight. Told him he's looking forward to our special family weekend starting Friday. I responded immediately. Just told me he's having drinks with a colleague. His Friday San Francisco trip still on schedule, according to him. Her reply was simple, unbelievable, But it was all too believable now, the pattern so clear that I could predict Nathan's lies before he even spoke them. His deceptions followed a consistent internal logic that made them sustainable over years. He compartmentalized his lives so completely that neither could contaminate the other. Until now. The next morning, I left early again, avoiding another performance over breakfast. My parents' flight would arrive that afternoon, and I needed to prepare them for what was coming. A delicate conversation I dreaded but couldn't postpone. Before heading to the airport, I met with David Mercer to finalize security arrangements for Saturday evening. His office felt familiar now, a command center for the operation that had expanded well beyond my initial investigation. "We've established a complete surveillance network on your husband's movements," David confirmed, showing me a secure tracking interface on his tablet. "His phone, laptop, and vehicle are all monitored. He cannot make a move without our knowledge." "Is that legal?" I asked, though the question felt somewhat academic given the circumstances. "The vehicle tracker is in a gray area since it's a jointly owned asset," David admitted. "The digital monitoring is justified by the fact that the devices are used for marital asset management and financial activities you have a legal interest in. However, I wouldn't recommend mentioning these measures in any potential divorce proceedings." "Understood. What does his current tracking show?" David pulled up a map. "He's at his office downtown, where he's been since 8:15 this morning. His digital activities show he's been communicating with Vanessa via his secondary phone, primarily about their plans for tomorrow evening." "And the hotel reservation at the Riverside?" "Confirmed for tomorrow night. Deluxe suite with champagne. Package." David's expression remained neutral, but I detected a hint of disgust. "He's also purchased theater tickets for Portland's symphony performance tomorrow night." I nodded, absorbing these details. "And his supposed San Francisco flight?" "Non-existent. No reservation in any airline system under his name or any known aliases for Friday. Instead, we've confirmed train tickets to Portland departing at 10:30 a.m. tomorrow." The evidence continued mounting, each piece fitting perfectly into the pattern of deception we'd uncovered. David proceeded to outline security plans for Saturday's event. "We'll have 4 plainclothes personnel positioned throughout the venue. Their primary function is to ensure your safety and manage any potential disruption. Additionally, we've coordinated with the hotel's head of security to establish protocols for different scenarios." "What kind of scenarios?" I asked. "Best case, your husband accepts the public revelation with dignity and departs quietly. Moderate case, verbal confrontation requiring de-escalation. Worst case, physical aggression or attempts to damage property." I hadn't seriously considered that Nathan might become violent, but David's professional thoroughness was reassuring nonetheless. "There's one more thing," I said, pulling out the guest list for our anniversary celebration. "Can you perform quick background checks on these individuals? I need to know if any of them might have knowledge of Nathan's double life or potential loyalties that would lead them to warn him." David scanned the list. "This is doable. I'll prioritize close friends and associates who have regular contact with him outside your presence. Anyone in particular you're concerned about?" "His college friends, especially this group." I circled. 4 names. "They take annual fishing trips together, supposedly. Given everything else I've discovered, I'm questioning whether these trips were actually to Portland." "We'll verify their knowledge or involvement," David assured me. "Anything else?" I hesitated, then voiced the concern that had been growing. "What about after the revelation? What if Nathan retaliates financially or otherwise?" David's expression softened slightly. "That's why we've been documenting everything so meticulously. The financial protections you've already put in place were a wise first step. After Saturday, you'll have options for restraining orders or other legal protections if necessary. My team can provide security assessments for your home and office as well." The conversation left me feeling both more secure and more apprehensive about what lay ahead. The infrastructure supporting my plan was solid, but the human element remained unpredictable. How would Nathan react when his carefully constructed worlds collided? How would our friends and family respond to the public revelation of his deception? From David's office, I drove to the airport to meet my parents. They'd been worried by my cryptic phone call, and their concerned faces as they emerged from the security area made my heart ache. My father, ever stoic, carried their luggage while scanning my expression for clues. My mother immediately pulled me into a tight embrace. "What's happened?" she asked quietly once we were in the car. "You look like you haven't slept in days." "It's Nathan," I began, keeping my eyes on the road. Everything I thought I knew about our marriage was a lie. Over the drive to their hotel, I outlined the situation in broad strokes. Nathan's secret family in Portland, the years of financial deception, the comprehensive double life he'd maintained throughout our marriage. My mother gasped at each revelation, while my father's silence grew heavier. "And you're certain?" he finally asked. "Beyond any doubt?" "Completely certain," I confirmed. "I've seen Ethan, his son, with my own eyes. I've spoken with Vanessa. I've documented every aspect of his deception. There's no other explanation." My mother reached from the back seat to squeeze my shoulder. "What do you need from us, sweetheart?" "Just your support," I replied, grateful for their unwavering presence. "Saturday night will be difficult, public. I need to know you're both standing with me." "Always," my father said firmly, his usual reticence giving way to fierce protectiveness. "Whatever you need, however you need it." As we approached their hotel, I provided final details about Saturday's plan, including the controlled revelation we'd arranged and the security measures in place. "It sounds like you've thought of everything," my mother observed as we parked. "But Sophia, have you considered what comes after? Are you prepared for the aftermath?" The question caught me off guard. I'd been so focused on exposing Nathan's lies that I hadn't fully processed what would follow. "I don't know," I admitted. "I just know I can't continue living this lie. Everything else will have to be figured out one step at a time." My father nodded approvingly. "That's wisdom. Some situations can't be planned beyond the next necessary action. You're doing what needs to be done." With my parents briefed and settled in their hotel, I headed to my final meeting of the day, strategy session with Renee to coordinate the precise timing and execution of Saturday's revelation. Tomorrow, Nathan would leave for his supposed San Francisco trip, actually bound for Portland and his evening with Vanessa and Ethan, and the day after that, both of his carefully compartmentalized worlds would collide spectacularly at the event, meant to celebrate the greatest lie of all, our perfect 10-year marriage. Friday morning arrived with a strange, charged atmosphere, like the heavy stillness before a thunderstorm. Nathan bustled around our bedroom, packing his overnight bag for what he claimed was his San Francisco business trip, but what I now knew was his romantic evening with Vanessa in Portland. "Just essentials," he explained, noticing me watching him from the doorway. "You'll bring my tux and everything for tomorrow night, right?" "All taken care of," I confirmed, leaning against the frame. "How long is your meeting expected to last?" "Couple hours at most. It's mostly a formality to sign the Henderson deal paperwork in person." The lie rolled off his tongue with practiced ease. "Flight lands at 2:30 tomorrow, so I should be at the hotel by 4 hours at the latest." I nodded, resisting the urge to confront him about the non-existent flight. "Perfect timing. The party starts at 7, but we'll need the prep time." Nathan zipped his bag closed and crossed the room to kiss me. 10 years with you," he murmured against my hair. "Best decade of my life." The tenderness in his voice nearly broke my composure. How could he speak such heartfelt words while actively preparing to spend the night with another woman and the child he'd hidden from me? The compartmentalization was beyond my comprehension. "Drive me to the airport?" he asked, checking his watch. We could grab breakfast on the way. The request caught me off guard. Nathan rarely asked me to drive him for business trips. Strategic choice, I now realized, to prevent any accidental discovery of his alternative destinations. I can't this morning, I improvised. Final consultation with the florist at 9 Yao. Can't reschedule since everything needs to be finalized today. Relief flickered briefly across his features. No problem. I'll get an Uber. 30 minutes. Later, I sat in my car 2 blocks from our house, watching through the tracking app as Nathan's Uber headed not toward the airport, but to the train station. David's surveillance team confirmed his purchase of a coffee and newspaper before boarding the 10:30 Portland-bound train. Target in transit, David messaged. Operatives in position at Portland Station and Riverside Hotel. The clinical terminology helped me maintain emotional distance from what was happening. This wasn't my husband heading to his mistress anymore. He was the target, his movements tracked with professional precision. My phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. Just got a message that he's on the train. Says he's excited for our special night before the business conference. Everything is proceeding as expected, I replied, our communications now sharing the same detached quality as David's. We'll update when he reaches Portland. With Nathan safely en route to his other life, I could focus on finalizing preparations for tomorrow's revelation. First stop, the Grand Lakeview Hotel, where our anniversary celebration and Nathan's public unmasking would take place. The event coordinator, Miranda, greeted me in the grand ballroom, tablet in hand. Mrs. Reynolds, everything's coming together beautifully. The florist delivered early this morning. The arrangements are stunning. I surveyed the space. Elegant table settings, soft lighting, the stage area where we had planned to renew our vows now repurposed for a very different kind of ceremony. Has the technical team tested the presentation system? I asked, gesturing toward the large screen and projector. Complete run-through yesterday afternoon, Miranda confirmed. The modified slideshow runs perfectly. Video and audio are crystal clear. And the private security additions? All set. They'll arrive at 5 Gowick tomorrow to coordinate with our regular team. Extra staff have been briefed to expect a surprise element to the evening, but not given specifics. I nodded, appreciating her discretion. Miranda had been professionally neutral when Renee explained we needed to make significant changes to the program, asking no questions beyond technical requirements. Whether she suspected the nature of those changes remained unclear, but her efficiency was invaluable. There's one more modification, I said, lowering my voice despite the empty room. We'll need an additional place setting at the main table. A last-minute guest. Miranda made a note, eyebrows raising slightly. Not a problem. Name for the place card? Vanessa Porter, I replied steadily. She'll be accompanied by a child. Could you arrange an appropriate seat for him as well? Something discreet, but near the main table? Now Miranda couldn't hide her surprise, though she maintained her professional demeanor. Of course, will Ms. Porter and her child require hotel accommodation as well? Already arranged, I confirmed. They'll be arriving tomorrow afternoon. After finalizing remaining details with Miranda, I met Renee for a working lunch at a nearby restaurant. She arrived with a leather portfolio bulging with documents. Final guest confirmations, she reported, sliding several pages across the table. 53 attendees, including your parents, Nathan's family, and all the key people from both your professional circles. I scanned the list, noting check marks beside various names. These are the ones David verified. Yes. According to his investigation, none of Nathan's close friends have knowledge of his Portland situation. The fishing trips were actual fishing trips. Nathan would simply separate from the group for a day to visit Vanessa and Ethan, then rejoin them. This aligned with what Vanessa had shared. Nathan had constructed his deception with remarkable care, ensuring no overlaps between his two worlds. What about his sister? I asked, scanning for Diane's name on the confirmation list. She'll be there solo, Her husband had a last-minute work emergency. Renee made air quotes around the phrase. David thinks she might suspect something's off with Nathan but has no concrete knowledge. And the updated slideshow? Renee opened her laptop, turning it to face me. Complete. We start with the romantic timeline as originally planned. Your meeting, dating highlights, wedding. Then, at the 10-minute mark, when Nathan joins you on stage for the vow renewal, it transitions to the evidence segment. She clicked through the presentation, showing the seamless shift from celebration to revelation. Photos of Nathan with Vanessa and Ethan appeared alongside financial records and timeline comparisons showing his parallel lives. The effect was devastating in its methodical exposition of his deception. Is it too much? Renee asked, watching. My expression. No, I replied firmly. It's exactly what's needed. No room for denial or manipulation. My phone buzzed with an update from David. Target arrived Portland. Surveillance confirms he's taken a taxi to a florist. Purchased arrangement, now heading to Riverside Hotel. I forwarded the message to Vanessa, who responded immediately. He just texted that he's checked into the hotel and is setting up a surprise. Should be here to pick us up in an hour. The pieces continued falling into place with clockwork precision. Nathan, believing himself the master orchestrator of his double life, had no idea he was now the one being manipulated. His movements, anticipated, his deceptions documented, his carefully separated worlds about to collide. My phone rang. Nathan. I took a deep breath before answering. Hey there, I said, injecting warmth into my voice. Landed safely? Just touched down. He lied smoothly, background noise suggesting he was indeed in a taxi, but certainly not. In San Francisco. Meeting in an hour, then dinner with the clients. How are the anniversary preparations going? Everything's on schedule, I replied truthfully. Just finalizing some surprise elements for tomorrow night. Can't wait, he said, and I detected genuine enthusiasm in his voice. Listen, reception's spotty here. I'll call you later tonight after the client dinner, okay? No need, I assured him. I'll be running around all evening with last-minute details. Just focus on wrapping up your meeting and getting back tomorrow. I've got everything under control here. After ending the call, I shared a meaningful look with Renee. He has absolutely no idea. Sociopathic, she muttered, shaking her head. To lie that convincingly. The afternoon proceeded with more preparations. I checked in with the photographer, who'd been briefed to capture reactions during the presentation without knowing exactly what was coming. The catering manager confirmed the menu and timing, and the DJ reviewed the adjusted schedule for the evening. By early evening, Nathan's tracking showed him at a restaurant in Portland with Vanessa and Ethan, their special family dinner, before the symphony performance he'd booked. Meanwhile, I met with David for a final security briefing at his office. Surveillance confirms your husband is fully engaged with his Portland family tonight, David reported. Based on observed patterns, he'll likely remain at the Riverside Hotel until approximately 10 a.m. tomorrow, then take the 10:30 train back to Seattle. Arriving at 1:30, I noted, not 2:30 as he claimed. Correct? He'll likely use that extra hour to prepare his story and approach to the anniversary event. David displayed a detailed security schematic of the Grand Lakeview Ballroom with positions marked for his team members. We'll have personnel here, and here, he indicated. Hotel security will monitor all exits. If your husband attempts to leave abruptly or becomes confrontational, we're prepared to intercept. And Vanessa and Ethan's arrival? Separate. Entrance. Time to coincide with the presentation transition. They'll remain out of sight until the cue for their entrance. David hesitated before adding, Mrs. Reynolds, is the boy fully prepared for what will happen tomorrow? This could be traumatic. The question touched on my greatest concern. Despite Vanessa's assurances that she'd explain things to Ethan, in age-appropriate terms, I worried about the impact of such a public scene on a 7-year-old. Vanessa has arranged for her sister to be present specifically to support Ethan, I explained. If the situation becomes too intense, her sister will take him to a separate room we've reserved. His well-being is a priority for both of us. David nodded, seemingly satisfied with the precautions. One final matter, Nathan's parents and sister have confirmed their attendance. How much do they know about what's coming? Nothing specific, I admitted. I've kept details vague, only telling my own parents the full story. Nathan's family will learn the truth along with everyone else. That could complicate the aftermath, David cautioned. Family loyalties run deep, even in the face of indisputable evidence. I'm prepared for that possibility, I assured him, though the prospect of losing my in-laws, people I'd genuinely grown to love over the past decade, weighed heavily on me. As evening fell, I returned home to an empty house that no longer felt like mine. The space we'd shared held too many tainted memories, too many moments I now questioned. Tomorrow night would bring the culmination of Nathan's deception and my response to it, but what would follow remained uncertain. My phone buzzed with a final message from Vanessa for the night. We're back at the hotel. Anne has been perfect all evening, attentive, loving, talked about our future together, even mentioned possibly having another child next year. The performance. He's putting on knowing what's coming tomorrow. She'd ended the message with a series of angry emojis. I didn't respond immediately, too overwhelmed by the image of Nathan discussing a future family with Vanessa just hours before he'd stand beside me, professing his devotion in celebration of our decade together. Instead, I walked through our house, perhaps for the last time, taking mental inventory of what truly mattered to me and what I could leave behind. Material possessions suddenly seemed insignificant compared to the reclaiming of truth and dignity that tomorrow would bring. In the morning, Nathan Reynolds would board a train believing he was returning to seamlessly step back into his Seattle life, his Portland secret intact. By evening, both carefully constructed worlds would lie in ruins around him. And I would finally be free of the beautiful lie I'd been living for 10 years. Saturday dawned clear and bright, a perfect day for endings and beginnings. I'd barely slept, my mind constantly reviewing the plan, imagining scenarios, preparing responses to Nathan's potential reactions. By 7 a.m., I was already showered, and dressed in casual clothes, my evening attire packed carefully in a garment bag alongside Nathan's tuxedo, the outfit he expected to wear while renewing vows he'd never truly honored. My phone lit up with a message from David. Target departure confirmed. 10:30 train from Portland to Seattle. Expected arrival 1:25 p.m. Understood, I replied. All preparations on schedule here. Next came a text from Vanessa. He just left. Told Ethan he had to go to an important business conference, but promised to be back next weekend for his baseball game. We're preparing to leave for Seattle in an hour. Everything okay on your end? Everything proceeding as planned, I assured her. Hotel room is ready whenever you arrive. Text me when you're there. With Nathan's movements confirmed, I began executing the day's carefully orchestrated schedule. First, I loaded everything I'd need for the evening into my car, my dress, Nathan's tux, the backup copy of the presentation on a USB drive, and a small overnight bag with essentials. Whatever happened tonight, I wouldn't be returning to this house. Renee arrived at 9 to help transport additional items to the hotel. Her expression was somber but determined as we carried boxes to her car. How are you holding up? She asked, studying my face. Focused, I replied, which was true. The emotional reckoning would come later. Right now, I operated with mechanical precision, checking items off mental lists, confirming arrangements, maintaining control over the one thing I could. The revelation of truth. Your parents called, Renee mentioned as we finished loading. They're meeting us at the hotel at noon. Perfect. I want them fully briefed before Nathan arrives. By 11:30, we'd transformed the hotel suite into a staging area for the evening's events. My dress, a striking midnight blue gown I'd selected months ago for a very different kind of celebration, hung in the closet. Nathan's tux waited beside it an unintentional symbol of the parallel lives now about to converge. My parents arrived precisely at noon, my father bringing coffee and my mother immediately pulling me into a fierce embrace. "You look exhausted," she murmured, studying my face with concern. "Did you sleep at all?" "Not much," I admitted. "Too much to coordinate." "Sit," she commanded, pushing me gently toward the suite's sofa. 10 minutes of rest while your father and I review the schedule Renee prepared. I complied, closing my eyes briefly while they discussed the evening's carefully planned timeline. Their voices, concerned but resolute, supportive without question, provided momentary comfort in the eye of the storm I'd created. The brief respite ended with a text from Vanessa. "Just checked into the hotel. Room 842. Ethan's sister Lisa is with us." "I'll come up," I replied, rising from the sofa. "There are some things we should discuss in person before everything starts." Renee squeezed my arm as I headed for the door. "Want me to come with you?" I shook my head. "This needs to be between us. Can you check in with Miranda about the final guest count?" The elevator ride to the 8th floor gave me moments to gather my thoughts. I'd communicated extensively with Vanessa over the past days, but this would be only our second face-to-face meeting, and the first with Ethan present. The complexity of our connection weighed heavily. We were neither friends nor enemies, but reluctant allies united by betrayal. Vanessa opened the door before I could knock, as if she'd been watching through the peephole. Behind her, a boy with Nathan's hazel eyes sat on the bed, playing a handheld video game while a woman who resembled Vanessa arranged clothes in the closet. "Sophia," Vanessa greeted me, her voice tight with tension. "This is my sister Lisa, and this," she gestured toward the boy, "is Ethan." Ethan looked up briefly, offering a shy "hello" before returning to his game. The casualness of his greeting suggested Vanessa hadn't fully explained who I was, which was probably wise given the circumstances. "Thank you for coming," I said, addressing all of them but focusing on Vanessa. "I know this isn't easy." Lisa approached, extending her hand. Vanessa explained everything. "I'm here to make sure Ethan's okay through all of this. If things get too intense, I'll bring him back here." "That's exactly what I was hoping for," I agreed, relieved by her practical approach. "We've arranged for room service to be available if needed." Vanessa guided me to the small sitting area while Lisa occupied Ethan with unpacking his backpack. "Nathan texted that he's on the train," she said softly. "Asked me to send a photo of Ethan to look at during his boring conference." Her bitter laugh held no humor. The commitment to the lie is almost impressive. "David's team confirmed he's on schedule to arrive in Seattle at 1:25, I noted. "He'll likely come directly to the hotel, expecting to find me preparing for the anniversary celebration. And instead, he'll find both of us," Vanessa completed. "Are you ready for that moment? For his reaction?" The question made me pause. Was I ready to witness Nathan's worlds colliding? To see the mask finally drop from the man I'd believed I knew? "As ready as I can be," I answered honestly. "What about you? What about Ethan?" Vanessa glanced at her son, lowering her voice further. "I've told him that his dad hasn't been completely honest with us, and that today we're going to a special event where grown-ups will be having some serious conversations. He knows Lisa will take him out if things get uncomfortable." "Has he asked questions?" "Some." I've answered as truthfully as possible without overwhelming him. "He knows his father has another home in Seattle, but not—" She hesitated. "Not that you're his wife." That part seemed too much. I nodded, understanding. Her protective instinct. "We've arranged for a separate room where Lisa can take him if needed. It has games, movies, everything to keep him occupied while we handle the situation." Vanessa's eyes filled unexpectedly with tears. I never wanted this for him. Never imagined his foundation would be built on lies. Nathan created this situation. Not you, I reminded her gently. You're doing the best you can with an impossible scenario he created. Our conversation was interrupted by a text alert on my phone. David. Target arrived at King Street Station, now in taxi heading toward hotel. ETA 12 minutes. I showed Vanessa the message, watching her face pale slightly. He's coming directly here. Exactly as predicted, I confirmed, rising from my seat. I need to be in our suite when he arrives. Are you certain about revealing yourself immediately, or do you prefer to wait until the event tonight? We'd discussed multiple approaches to the confrontation, weighing the benefits of a private revelation versus the public exposure planned for the evening. I want to see his face when he realizes we know, Vanessa said firmly, when he understands that his perfect system has collapsed. But, she glanced at Ethan, not with my son present. Lisa will keep him here until we send for them later. Understood. I'll text when Nathan arrives at our suite. Give me 15 minutes with him alone, then come down to room 412. As I headed back to my suite, adrenaline surged through my system. After days of planning, investigating, and coordinating, the moment of truth was nearly here. Nathan was minutes away from facing the consequences of his decade-long deception. My parents and Renee looked up expectantly when I entered the suite. Nathan's on his way, I announced. 12 minutes out. Vanessa and I have coordinated the initial confrontation. Mom, Dad. I'd like you to step into the adjoining room when he arrives. This first part needs to be between us. They nodded, my father squeezing my mother's hand reassuringly. We'll be right through that door if you need us. Renee, could you check on the ballroom preparations? Make sure everything's proceeding on schedule for tonight? Of course, she agreed, gathering her things. Text me once the initial. Discussion is complete. After they'd gone, I paced the suite, rehearsing my approach one final time. Should I lead with what I knew? Or allow Nathan to continue his deception, digging himself deeper before the revelation? The latter felt cruelly manipulative, yet part of me wanted him to experience the magnitude of his own dishonesty before it all collapsed around him. My phone buzzed again. David. Target entering hotel now, proceeding to elevators. I positioned myself near the window, creating a tableau of the devoted wife finishing anniversary preparations. The keycard clicked in the door exactly 7 minutes later. Soph? Nathan called cheerfully as he entered, pulling his small suitcase. Made it back earlier than expected. Meeting wrapped up quickly. I turned, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. How was San Francisco? Successful trip? Very, he confirmed, crossing the room to kiss my cheek. Henderson signed everything without a single revision. Worth the quick trip. The lie was so smooth, so natural that for a brief, disorienting moment, I questioned all the evidence I'd gathered. How could someone fabricate entire experiences with such conviction, unless they somehow believed them themselves? I'm glad, I replied, maintaining my composure. The tux is hung up in the closet. Everything's ready for tonight. Nathan surveyed the suite appreciatively. You've thought of everything as usual. That's one of the things I've always loved. About you, your attention to detail. The irony of his statement almost broke my composure. It was precisely my attention to detail that had finally uncovered his web of deception. Speaking of details, I said carefully, there's something important we need to discuss before the celebration tonight. Nathan's expression shifted slightly. Barely perceptible tensing around his eyes. Oh? Problem with the venue? No, the Grand Lake view is perfect. Beautiful space. Plenty of room for all our guests. I paused meaningfully. Even the last-minute additions. Last-minute additions? Now wariness crept into his voice. Sophia, we agreed on the final guest list weeks ago. Who did you add? I moved to the desk and picked up my phone, sending the predetermined text to Vanessa. "He's here. Come down in 15 minutes. Just someone who deserves to be part of our milestone celebration," I replied, turning back to face him fully. "Someone who's been part of your life for the past 8 years. The color drained from Nathan's face so rapidly I feared he might faint. "What are you talking about?" "Portland, Nathan," I said quietly. "Vanessa Porter. Ethan. Your second. Family." He staggered slightly, reaching for the edge of the sofa to steady himself. For several seconds he said nothing, his mind visibly racing through options, calculations, possible explanations. "Sophia," he finally managed, voice strained. "I don't know what you think you've discovered, but—" "Stop," I interrupted, my tone sharper than I'd intended. "Just stop. The lying ends now. I know everything. The monthly payments, the fake business trips, the Portland house, the birth certificate listing you as Ethan's father. Your promises to Vanessa about a future together once your fictional divorce was finalized." Nathan sank onto the sofa, his carefully maintained facade crumbling. "How?" he whispered. "Does it matter? The important thing is that your perfect system failed. Your separate worlds are about to collide, Nathan. Tonight, in front of everyone who matters to us." Panic flashed across his features. "The anniversary party, you can't possibly—" "I can and I will," I stated firmly. "Every guest will learn exactly who they've been celebrating. The truth about our marriage, about your son, about the elaborate fiction you've maintained for 8 years. Nathan's expression transformed then, panic giving way to calculation. He stood, approaching me with hands outstretched in supplication. "Sophia, please, we can work through this. Whatever you've found, whatever you think you know, there are explanations, circumstances you don't understand." "Such as?" I challenged, stepping back to maintain distance between us. "Ethan was an accident. Before our marriage was serious, Vanessa needed support, but she was unstable, threatened to cause problems if I didn't stay involved. I was trying to protect you, protect us. The desperate fabrication would have been almost pitiful if it weren't so offensive. He was born 7 months after our wedding, Nathan. I've seen the birth certificate." His mouth opened and closed silently, this fact apparently undermining whatever narrative he'd been constructing. "And the Riverside Hotel reservation for last night?" I continued relentlessly. "The symphony tickets? The romantic dinner? Were those all to protect me too?" "You've been spying on me," he accused, deflection replacing his initial shock. "Invading my privacy. How long have you been tracking me? Recording me?" "Long enough to document every aspect of your double life," I replied evenly. "Every lie, every diverted dollar, every promise to both me and Vanessa that you never intended to keep." Nathan's expression hardened, his initial panic now replaced by something colder, more calculated. "And what exactly do you hope to accomplish with this public spectacle? Humiliate me? Destroy both families? Have you considered what this will do to Ethan?" The mention of his son as a shield infuriated me. "Don't you dare use that child as your moral cover. If you cared about Ethan's well-being, you wouldn't have built his entire life on a foundation of lies." A knock at the door interrupted whatever response Nathan had been formulating. His eyes widened in alarm, darting between me and the entrance. "That would be Vanessa," I informed him calmly. "She's eager to discuss your plans for another child next year, the one you mentioned during your special evening together last night, right after making anniversary plans with me." The blood drained from Nathan's face for the second time as I moved to open the door. Vanessa stood in the hallway, her expression a complex mixture of anger, hurt, and determination. "Hello, Nathan," she said, stepping into the suite. "Surprise." Nathan's reaction to Vanessa's entrance was a study in pure panic. He backed away as though she were an apparition, his carefully compartmentalized worlds now physically occupying the same room. "This is insane," he stammered, looking wildly between us. "The two of you planning this ambush together? Do you realize what you're doing?" "We know exactly what we're doing," Vanessa replied, her voice steadier than I would have expected. "We're comparing notes on the man who's been lying to both of us for 8 years. Nathan's gaze darted to the door as if calculating an escape route, but his survival instincts quickly redirected to damage control. "Listen, both of you," he began, hands raised in a placating gesture. "I understand you're upset. Things look bad from your perspective, but there are explanations, complex circumstances." "Complex circumstances?" I echoed incredulously. "Is that what you call maintaining 2 separate families? Stealing hundreds of thousands from our joint accounts to fund your Portland life? Telling Vanessa we were separated while planning our 10th anniversary celebration?" Vanessa stepped forward, her composure wavering. "You told me you were working toward divorce, that financial complications were the only obstacle to our future, together. 8 years, Nathan. 8 years of promises while you went home to your wife." Nathan's expression shifted then, a calculating look replacing his initial panic. "Vanessa, everything I told you about my feelings was true. Sophia and I have been separated emotionally for years. This anniversary, it was for appearances, for family, for business connections." The ease with which he pivoted to new lies was breathtaking. I almost admired the adaptability of his deception. Almost. "Really?" I challenged, moving to the desk where I'd prepared key evidence. "These don't look like appearances to me." I spread out photographs from our recent vacation, intimate moments that contradicted his claim of emotional separation. "Nor do the anniversary plans you've been enthusiastically discussing for months." "And what about these?" Vanessa added, pulling out her phone to display text messages. "Last night you talked about having another child with me, planning a future together. Was that for appearances too?" Nathan's eyes hardened as he realized his standard manipulations weren't working. "This is a violation of privacy. Both of you going through my personal communications, tracking my movements. There are laws against stalking, against fraud?" I interrupted. "Against misappropriation of marital assets? Against bigamy? Because while you may not have legally married Vanessa, you've certainly presented yourself as committed to both of us simultaneously." "I've consulted attorneys," Vanessa added. "Your financial arrangements for Ethan constitute legal acknowledgement of paternity. The implications for child support, legitimate child support, not your controlled monthly payments, are significant." Nathan's face flushed with anger. "So that's what this is about? Money? Both of you conspiring to extract maximum financial benefit?" "No," I replied coldly. "This is about truth, about consequences for choices you've made, about ending the manipulation of people who trusted you." The door to the adjoining room opened, and my parents emerged. Nathan's eyes widened at the sight of them. "Robert, Linda," he began, forcing a smile that looked more like a grimace. "I didn't realize you were here. This is all a misunderstanding." "Save it," my father interrupted, his voice granite. "We've seen the evidence, all of it." "You involved your parents in this?" Nathan asked me incredulously. "Made them part of this? This spectacle?" "They deserve to know why their daughter's marriage was ending," I replied simply. "Just as your parents deserve to know who their son really is." Nathan paled. "My parents? You can't possibly be planning to—" "They'll be at the anniversary celebration tonight," I confirmed. "Along with everyone else who's been part of our lives. Your colleagues, our friends, your sister. Everyone who's believed the fiction you've created." "This is vindictive," he hissed, desperation giving way to anger. "Deliberately cruel. You could have handled this privately, discussed terms. reached an arrangement that protected everyone's dignity. An arrangement? Vanessa repeated, her voice rising. Like the arrangement where I waited 8 years for a divorce that was never coming? Where my son grew up thinking his father couldn't live with us because of complications, rather than because he had another family? Nathan turned on her. You were happy with our arrangement for years. The financial support? The regular visits. You never complained until he jabbed a finger toward me. Got involved and poisoned everything. The attempt to drive a wedge between us was so transparent I almost laughed. Nice try, Nathan. But we've compared notes extensively. Your manipulations don't work when we can verify everything against each other's experiences. My phone buzzed, with a text from David. Security in place. All guests beginning to arrive. Presentation ready. I showed the message to Vanessa, who nodded slightly. It's time to get ready, I told her. The guests will be arriving for cocktail hour soon. Ready? Nathan echoed, looking between us with growing alarm. You're still planning to go through with this farce of an anniversary celebration? Oh, the celebration is happening. Confirmed. Just not the one you were expecting. Your tux is in the closet. I suggest you start getting dressed. This is ridiculous, he snapped. If you think I'm going to participate in my own public humiliation. You have two options, my father interjected, his tone leaving no room for argument. Attend the event and face the consequences of your actions with some semblance of dignity, or attempt to flee and have everyone draw their own conclusions from your absence. Either way, the truth comes out tonight. Nathan looked trapped, his eyes darting between us as he calculated his remaining options. Finally, his shoulders slumped in defeat. Fine, let me change. Then we can discuss how to handle this situation with minimal damage. The time for negotiation was before you created two separate families, I replied. Now it's time for truth. As Nathan disappeared into the bathroom with his tux, Vanessa approached me. Is Ethan still upstairs with your sister? I asked quietly. She nodded. Lisa will bring him down when it's time. He's still unaware of the full situation. My parents moved closer, my mother taking my hand supportively. Are you absolutely certain about doing this publicly? She asked, concern etching her features. It's not too late to handle this more privately. I'm certain, I confirmed. This isn't just about ending my marriage or exposing Nathan's lies. It's about reclaiming the narrative. For 10 years, he's controlled the story of our lives. Tonight, the truth speaks for itself. The bathroom door opened and Nathan emerged in his tuxedo, his expression a mask of forced composure. Let's be clear about what happens next, he said with artificial calm. We'll make a brief appearance at this event. I'll announce that Sophia and I are experiencing some unexpected personal issues and need to cut the celebration short. No scenes, no public accusations. We can sort out the details privately afterward. His attempt to dictate terms was almost laughable. Even now, facing complete exposure, he was trying to maintain control of the situation. That's not the plan, I informed him. The presentation begins at 8 p.m. The complete documentation of your double life will be displayed for everyone present. Vanessa will be introduced as what she is, a woman you've deceived for 8 years while maintaining our marriage. Your son will be acknowledged. The financial fraud will be exposed. Nathan's face contorted with fury. You can't do this. I'll sue for defamation. I'll make sure everyone knows you're unstable, vindictive. Everything we're presenting is documented. Fact, I interrupted calmly. Financial records, travel logs, property ownership, paternity test results, your own messages to both of us, often sent on the same days with eerily similar content. His expression shifted again, calculation replacing anger. Sophia, please, think about what this will do to our families, to your business connections, to Ethan. Is public humiliation really necessary? The invocation of his son again, a child he'd hidden from me for 8 years, ignited a flare of anger I'd been suppressing. "Don't you dare use Ethan as a shield," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "If you cared about his well-being, you wouldn't have built his entire existence around lies." A knock at the door interrupted the tense standoff. Renee entered without waiting for a response, her eyes widening slightly at the tableau before her. "Everything's ready downstairs," she reported. "Guests are arriving. Your parents just got here," she added, looking at Nathan. "And Diane." Nathan's face paled further at the mention of his family. "This is a mistake," he said hoarsely. "All of you participating in this. This orchestrated destruction. You destroyed everything the moment you decided to live a double life," my father replied, his usual reserve giving way to barely contained anger. "Actions have consequences." "It's time," I said, checking my watch. "Cocktail hour has started. We should make our entrance." Nathan glanced toward the door, clearly contemplating escape, but David appeared in the doorway as if on cue, a silent, imposing reminder that every contingency had been considered. "Fine," Nathan spat, adjusting his tie with trembling hands. "Let's get this over with." Our procession to the ballroom must have looked peculiar to any hotel guests we passed, Nathan and I in our formal attire, Vanessa following a few steps. Behind, my parents and Renee flanking us like guards, and David bringing up the rear. No one spoke during the elevator ride or the walk through the hotel's elegant corridors. At the ballroom entrance, I paused, taking a deep breath to steady myself. Through the doors, I could hear the murmur of conversation, laughter, music. 50 people gathered to celebrate a marriage that had been a sham for nearly its entire existence. "Last chance to handle this with dignity," Nathan murmured, his hand gripping my elbow too tightly. "Walk in there, make a brief appearance, then announce. We need to leave due to a personal emergency." I removed his hand from my arm and met his eyes directly. "No more manipulation, Nathan. No more controlling the narrative. Tonight, everyone learns the truth." With that, I nodded to the attendant, who opened the double doors to the ballroom. Conversations paused as heads turned toward us, the guests of honor arriving for their milestone celebration. Miranda, the event coordinator, immediately approached with professional enthusiasm. "There you are. Everyone's been asking about you. Shall we begin the reception line so guests can offer their congratulations?" "A slight change of plans," I replied, ignoring Nathan's warning look. "We'll mingle informally for now. The presentation will begin at 8 hours sharp." "Of course," she agreed, gesturing toward the elegantly decorated space. "Everything's ready whenever you are." As we moved into the room, guests approached with smiles and congratulations. Nathan's parents made their way through the crowd, his father dignified in a classic tuxedo, his mother resplendent in a champagne-colored gown. "There they are!" his mother exclaimed, embracing first Nathan, then me. 10 years! It seems like just yesterday we were at your wedding." "Margaret, William," I greeted them warmly, genuine affection underlying my tension. They had always been kind to me, and what would unfold tonight would hurt them deeply. "Thank you for being here." Nathan accepted his father's handshake with visible unease. "Dad, Mom, great to see you." "You look stressed, son," William observed, his shrewd eyes missing nothing. "Everything all right?" "Just overwhelmed by the occasion," Nathan replied, forcing a smile. From across the room, I caught sight of Nathan's sister, Diane, observing us with unusual intensity. Of all his family members, she had always seemed most skeptical of her brother's perfect image. Perhaps she had sensed something amiss all along. For the next 45 minutes, we circulated through the crowd in a surreal pantomime of celebration. Nathan maintained a rigid smile, flinching whenever another guest congratulated us on our perfect marriage or commented on how we were clearly meant to be together. Meanwhile, Vanessa remained in the background, her presence noted but unexplained as she awaited her cue. At 7:55, I nodded to Renee, who moved discreetly to the audio-visual station. Miranda took the microphone, calling for everyone's attention. Ladies and gentlemen, if you would please take your seats, we're about to begin the special presentation celebrating Nathan and Sophia's 10 years together. Nathan gripped my arm again, his voice a desperate whisper. Sophia, I'm begging you. Don't do this. I met his gaze steadily. For 8 years, I lived a lie you created. Tonight, I reclaim my truth. As the lights dimmed and the large screen illuminated with our wedding photo, I moved toward the small stage area. Nathan remained frozen near our table, watching as the life he'd fabricated prepared to unravel before everyone who mattered to him. Welcome, friends and family, I began, my voice surprisingly steady as I addressed the audience. Thank you for joining us on this significant evening. We've gathered to commemorate 10 years of marriage between Nathan and myself, a decade that deserves to be recognized for exactly what it has been. I paused, scanning the expectant faces before me. Before we begin the presentation, I'd like to introduce someone important who many of you haven't met. Vanessa, would you join me, please? Vanessa moved forward from the periphery of the room, her expression solemn as she took her place beside me. A confused murmur rippled through the audience. This is Vanessa Porter, I continued. Nathan's partner of 8 years from Portland, Oregon. And in a moment, you'll meet their 7-year-old son, Ethan. The murmur became a collective gasp, as all eyes darted between Vanessa, me, and Nathan, who had gone deathly pale at the edge of the room. What you're about to see, I said, gesturing toward the screen where our wedding photo still displayed, is the complete truth about the marriage we've been celebrating. Documented, verified, and finally revealed. The presentation began to play, and with it, Nathan's carefully constructed double life illuminated for all to witness. The presentation unfolded with devastating precision. On the large screen, our wedding photos transitioned to financial records showing systematic withdrawals from our joint accounts. These were juxtaposed with property records for the Portland house, purchased shortly after Ethan's birth. Timeline. Graphics illustrated Nathan's business trips perfectly aligned with significant events in Ethan's life: birthdays, school performances, baseball tournaments. The audience's reaction evolved from confused murmurs to gasps of shock, to a heavy, stunned silence as the magnitude of Nathan's deception became undeniable. His parents sat rigidly in their front row seats, his mother's hand covering her mouth, his father's expression hardening with each new revelation. Screenshots of nearly identical text messages sent to both Vanessa and me on the same days appeared side by side, revealing how Nathan had recycled the same endearments, the same promises, even the same excuses to maintain both relationships. Most damning were the voicemails we'd recovered from his second phone, declarations of commitment to Vanessa and promises of their future together, recorded days before our anniversary. Throughout this systematic dismantling of his double life, Nathan remained frozen near the edge of the room, his face a mask of barely contained panic. Several times he appeared ready to interrupt, to attempt damage control, but David's presence nearby, a silent reminder of the futility of escape, seemed to keep him immobilized. When the presentation reached its conclusion with Ethan's birth, certificate clearly showing Nathan as the father, the date undeniably within our marriage, I turned back to address the silenced audience. I discovered this deception exactly 1 week ago, I explained, my voice steady despite the emotion churning beneath. Like all of you, I believed in the marriage we were gathered to celebrate tonight. Instead, I found evidence of a second family, systematic financial fraud, and 8 years of calculated lies. Vanessa stepped forward, her composure remarkable under the circumstances. I similarly believed I was in an exclusive relationship with Nathan. He told me he was separated from his wife in Seattle, that divorce proceedings were underway but complicated by financial entanglements. For 8 years, I waited patiently for a resolution that was never coming, raising our son with the promise that someday we would be a proper family. A movement at the back of the room caught my attention. Lisa had entered with Ethan, holding his hand protectively as he took in the crowded ballroom with wide eyes. Nathan saw them simultaneously, his face draining of color as his son, the child he'd hidden from his entire Seattle life, became visible to everyone present. Nathan's mother rose shakily from her seat, her gaze fixed on Ethan. Even from across the room, the resemblance was unmistakable. The same hazel eyes, the same dimple when he smiled nervously at the crowd's attention. "Is that?" she began, her voice faltering. "Your grandson," I confirmed gently. "Ethan. He's 7 years old." William Reynolds stood next to his wife, his expression a complex mixture of anger and disbelief. "Nathan," he said, his authoritative voice cutting through the silence. "Is this true? All of it?" All eyes turned to Nathan, who seemed to physically shrink under the collective scrutiny. For several excruciating seconds, he remained silent, visibly calculating potential responses before apparently realizing the futility of further deception. "It's complicated," he finally managed, his voice barely audible. "No," I corrected firmly. "It's actually quite simple. You chose to create and maintain two separate families. You chose to systematically deceive everyone in this room. You chose to divert hundreds of thousands of dollars from our marriage to fund your second life. There's nothing complicated about deliberate, sustained deception." Diane, Nathan's sister, had moved to stand beside their parents, her expression one of grim vindication rather than surprise. "I knew something wasn't right," she said, addressing no one in particular. "All those years of excuses about why we couldn't visit during certain weekends. The vague explanations about investments when money disappeared." Nathan seemed to find his voice, stepping forward with hands raised placatingly. "I know this looks bad, but if you just let me explain—" "Explain what, exactly?" William interrupted, his tone cutting. "Explain how you've lied to your mother and me for years, how you've betrayed your wife, how you've denied us knowledge of our own grandson. Or perhaps you'd like to explain to our friends and colleagues how you've presented yourself as the model husband and business partner while systematically defrauding our joint accounts," I added. Nathan's desperate gaze swept the room, searching for any sympathetic face but finding none. His carefully constructed world had collapsed completely, leaving him exposed before everyone whose respect and affection he'd cultivated. "I never meant to hurt anyone," he tried weakly. "Things just happened. One situation led to another, and before I knew it." "Before you knew it, you were maintaining two separate homes, two relationships, and hiding a child for 8 years?" Vanessa interrupted, her composure finally cracking. "Things didn't just happen, Nathan. You made deliberate choices every single day." The confrontation might have continued indefinitely, if not for a small voice that cut through the tension. "Dad?" Ethan had broken away from Lisa and approached the center of the room, his expression confused as he sensed the hostile atmosphere. "What's happening? Why is everyone mad?" The simple question from an innocent child silenced the room instantly. Nathan stared at his son, visible conflict playing across his features, perhaps the first genuine emotion he'd displayed all evening. "Ethan, honey." Vanessa moved quickly to her son's side. "Remember how I explained that tonight would be complicated? That grown-ups would be having serious conversations?" The boy nodded, his eyes still fixed on his father. "But why is Dad in trouble?" Before anyone could respond, Margaret Reynolds, Nathan's mother, slowly approached Ethan, her eyes brimming with tears. "Hello, Ethan," she said gently, kneeling despite her formal gown to meet his eye level. "I'm your grandmother. I've been waiting a very long time to meet you." The simple, heartfelt introduction shifted the energy in the room. Whatever anger and betrayal the elder Reynolds felt toward their son, they weren't going to direct it at their newly discovered grandson. William joined his wife, his stern expression softening as he extended his hand to Ethan. "And I'm your grandfather. I understand you play baseball?" Ethan nodded, momentarily distracted from the tension. "I'm a pitcher. Dad comes to all my games." The innocent comment landed like another indictment on Nathan, highlighting the compartmentalized commitment he'd maintained, present for his son's activities while hiding that son's very existence from his wife and family. Lisa approached me quietly. "This is getting intense for Ethan. Should I take him out now?" I nodded gratefully. "The private room we arranged is ready. Perhaps his grandparents would like some time to get acquainted in a less charged atmosphere?" The suggestion provided a graceful exit. Margaret looked to Vanessa questioningly, seeking permission. "That would be nice," Vanessa agreed, recognizing the olive branch being extended. "Ethan, would you like to spend some time getting to know your grandparents? They've missed out on a lot." As Lisa escorted Ethan and the elder Reynolds from the ballroom, the remaining guests seemed to collectively exhale. The most innocent party in this tragedy was temporarily removed from the fallout, allowing the adults to address the situation more directly. Nathan, momentarily forgotten during the interaction with Ethan, had retreated to the bar, downing a glass of scotch with shaking hands. His sister approached him, their heated exchange visible though not audible from where I stood. My parents moved to my side, my father's arm around my shoulders providing silent support. "What happens now?" my mother asked quietly. "Now," I replied, "we conclude this event with dignity. I'll thank everyone for coming, explain that obviously the planned vow renewal won't be occurring, and suggest that people take time to process what they've learned." Renee joined our small group. "The hotel has opened the adjacent reception room for people who want to stay and talk." Most seemed too shocked to just leave. "Perfect," I nodded gratefully. "I think many will have questions. We'll need to process this together." Approaching the microphone once more, I addressed the stunned assembly. "Thank you all for your presence tonight. Obviously, this evening has taken an unexpected turn. What was planned as an anniversary celebration has instead become a necessary revelation of truth. I apologize for the public nature of this disclosure, but after discovering the extent of the deception, I felt everyone deserved to know the reality of the situation." I paused, making eye contact with various friends and family members whose support had meant so much over the years. "The next room has been opened for those who wish to stay and process this information together. Vanessa and I will both be available to answer questions. Nathan," I glanced toward where he stood isolated at the bar, "will make his own decisions about his participation." As guests began moving somewhat dazedly toward the exit, many stopping to embrace me or offer words of support, I felt a curious lightness spreading through me. The weight of the revelation, the stress of the planning, the pain of the betrayal, all were still present, but now accompanied by something unexpected. Relief. The truth, however painful, had finally been spoken. No more deception, no more manipulation, no more carefully maintained fiction masquerading as my life. Whatever came next would at least be authentic. Vanessa approached as the room gradually emptied, her expression reflecting a similar complex mixture of emotions. That was... She searched for the right word. "Necessary," I supplied. "Painful, but necessary." She nodded. "What happens tomorrow? And the day after? Have you thought about what comes next?" The question echoed what my mother had asked earlier, and I found my answer hadn't changed. "One step at a time," I said simply. Tonight was about ending the lie. Tomorrow begins the process of rebuilding truth. A commotion near the bar drew our attention. Nathan, apparently having consumed several scotches in quick succession, was arguing loudly with the bartender who had cut him off. David moved smoothly to intervene before the situation escalated. "He's going to lose everything," Vanessa observed, watching Nathan being firmly escorted from the ballroom. "His reputation, Possibly his career once the financial fraud becomes widely known. Definitely his marriage. He lost those things the moment he chose deception, I replied. Tonight just made the loss visible. We stood in companionable silence for a moment, these two women who had shared the same man for 8 years without knowing of each other's existence. We should check on Ethan, Vanessa said finally. Make sure he's handling this okay. And see how the grandparents are doing, I added. This has been as much a shock for them as for anyone. As we moved toward the private room where Ethan was meeting his grandparents for the first time, I felt a sense of closure beginning to form. The marriage I had believed in was over, but the life built on lies had ended as well. What remained was possibility, uncertain and daunting, but authentic. The evening had delivered exactly what I'd intended. Truth, consequences, and the first steps toward a future no longer shadowed by deception. The coastal breeze ruffled my hair as I stood on the deck of my new beach house, watching waves crash against the shore in rhythmic succession. 1 year had passed since the night that had simultaneously ended my marriage and begun my journey toward authentic living. The anniversary of that revelation had arrived with surprising gentleness, more a milestone of healing than a reopening of wounds. "Coffee's ready," Renee called from inside. "And your attorney is on the phone. Something about the final settlement papers." I smiled at the timing. After months of legal maneuvering and negotiations, the divorce was finally reaching its conclusion. Exactly 1 year after I'd discovered Nathan's double life. Taking the phone, I greeted my attorney. "Laura, good morning. You have news?" "The judge signed off on everything," she confirmed. "The financial settlement is executed exactly as we negotiated. The fraud claims have been officially documented in the court record. It's done, Sophia." Relief washed over me. Not because I'd secured a favorable settlement, though I had, but because this final legal entanglement with Nathan was severed. "Thank you for everything, Laura. Your guidance has been invaluable." After ending the call, I rejoined Renee on the deck overlooking the Pacific. This weekend gathering had been her idea, a celebration of new beginnings rather than a commemoration of endings. "So it's official?" she asked, handing me a steaming mug. "Completely finished," I confirmed. "The Reynolds chapter is officially closed." "And how does it feel?" I considered the question, watching a pair of seagulls ride air currents above the water. Lighter than I expected. Like setting down a burden I didn't realize I was still carrying. The glass door slid open behind us as my mother emerged from the house, phone in hand. "Vanessa just texted. They're about 20 minutes away." The inclusion of Vanessa and Ethan in this weekend gathering had been unexpected but felt right. Somehow. Our connection, forged through shared betrayal, had evolved into something neither of us could have anticipated. Not friendship exactly, but a unique bond built on mutual respect and understanding. The past year had transformed both our lives in ways we couldn't have imagined that night at the Grand Lakeview Hotel. The public revelation of Nathan's deception had sent shockwaves through our social and professional circles, but the aftermath had proven surprisingly supportive for both of us. Nathan, by contrast, had experienced the full consequences of his actions. His firm had placed him on administrative leave once the financial irregularities came to light, eventually terminating him after their internal investigation confirmed he'd engaged in similar questionable practices with client funds. The State Bar Association had opened an ethics investigation, resulting in the suspension of his license to practice. His carefully cultivated professional reputation lay in ruins, his social standing irreparably damaged by the public nature of his exposure. Last I'd heard through mutual connections, he'd relocated to Arizona, attempting to rebuild some semblance of a career far from the Seattle community that now viewed him with contempt. "Penny for your thoughts," my father said, joining us on the deck with his own coffee. "Just reflecting on how much has changed in a year," I replied. "Sometimes it feels like a lifetime ago, Other times it seems like yesterday. He nodded thoughtfully. Healing isn't linear, neither is rebuilding. My father's simple wisdom had been a cornerstone of my recovery over the past year. While my mother had provided emotional support and practical assistance, his steady presence and occasional profound observations had helped me navigate the most challenging moments. The design firm called while you were on the phone, he mentioned. The Westlake project was approved. Congratulations. I smiled at this latest piece of good news. My interior design business had not just survived the personal turmoil, but thrived in its aftermath. The authenticity I'd reclaimed in my personal life had somehow transferred to my professional approach, resulting in more meaningful connections with clients and more fulfilling projects. That's the third major commission this quarter. Renee. Noted. The Reynolds scandal doesn't seem to have hurt your professional reputation at all. If anything, it enhanced it, I acknowledged. People seem to appreciate working with someone who values truth, even when it's difficult. The sound of tires on gravel announced new arrivals. Moments later, Vanessa's voice called out from the front of the house, followed by Ethan's excited chatter as he discovered the proximity to the beach. "We're on the deck," my mother called back. "Come around the side path." Vanessa appeared with Ethan bounding ahead, his energy palpable as he spotted the ocean. At 8 years old now, he'd weathered the past year's upheaval with remarkable resilience. "Can I go down to the beach?" he asked immediately, barely taking time for greetings. "Let's get settled first," Vanessa laughed. "Then we can all go down together." As Ethan reluctantly helped bring bags into the house, Vanessa joined us on the deck, accepting the coffee my father offered. "How was the drive from Portland?" I asked. "Surprisingly easy," she replied. "Ethan's been counting down the days for this weekend. The beach is his favorite place." We'd seen each other periodically throughout the year, mostly in connection with legal proceedings or matters involving Nathan's parents, who had made concerted efforts to establish a relationship with their grandson. These interactions had initially been awkward, but had gradually evolved into a comfortable familiarity. "Margaret and William send their regards," Vanessa mentioned, referring to Nathan's parents. "They wanted me to thank you again for encouraging the relationship with Ethan despite everything that happened." That decision, to support Nathan's parents' connection with their grandson despite their son's betrayal, had been among the first healing steps I'd taken in the aftermath of the revelation. Their heartbreak had been as genuine as mine, their sense of betrayal perhaps even deeper given the knowledge that they'd been deprived of their only grandchild for 7 years. "They're good people," I said simply. "They deserve to know him." Ethan reappeared, clearly impatient with adult conversation when the Pacific Ocean beckoned just yards away. "Mom, can we please go to the beach now? I want to show Sophia the shell collection technique Grandpa William taught me." His easy inclusion of me and his excitement reflected the unusual dynamic we'd developed. Not a parental relationship, but a genuine connection built on honesty appropriate to his age and understanding. He knew I had been married to his father, knew that his father had made very bad choices that hurt many people, but had been spared the most sordid details. "Go change into beach clothes," Vanessa instructed. "We'll head down in 10 minutes. As Ethan raced off, Vanessa's expression grew more serious. "Have you heard the latest about Nathan?" I shook my head. "Nothing beyond what came up in the final settlement negotiations." "He's getting married again," she revealed, her tone carefully neutral. "To someone in Phoenix. The engagement announcement appeared online last week." The news landed with surprising gentleness, more a curiosity than a wound. That was fast. "According to mutual friends, he told her he's a widower," Vanessa added. "Complete fiction about a tragic accident taking his beloved wife." Renee nearly choked on her coffee. "You can't be serious. After everything, he's still creating elaborate lies?" "Some people never change," my father observed quietly. They just find new audiences for the same performance. Rather than anger or hurt, I felt a wave of pity for this unknown woman entering a relationship built on foundational deceptions. Should someone warn her? Vanessa shrugged. I considered it briefly, then realized it's not our responsibility to manage his behavior anymore. We've done our part by ensuring the legal record clearly documents his actions. She was right. Of course. We had freed ourselves from Nathan's manipulations. We weren't obligated to save everyone else from them. Ethan reappeared in beach attire, ending the momentary solemnity of the conversation. His excitement proved contagious as we all made our way down the wooden steps to the beach below. Walking along the shoreline with Ethan darting ahead in search of shells, Vanessa and I fell into step together. A year ago, I could never have imagined this scenario, she admitted, gesturing to our unlikely gathering. The two women in Nathan's life vacationing together, building some kind of friendship? Is that what this is? I asked, genuinely curious about her perspective. I'm not sure there's a word for what this is, she replied thoughtfully. Co-survivors? Truth allies? I laughed at the awkward terminology. Maybe we don't need to label it. Maybe it's enough that we both chose truth, however painful, over comfortable lies. Ahead of us, Ethan had discovered a tidal pool and was calling excitedly for us to see his findings. Renee had already joined him, kneeling in the sand to examine whatever marine treasure he'd located. He's doing well, I observed. The therapy seems to have helped. Vanessa nodded. Children are remarkably adaptable when given honest, age-appropriate explanations. He misses his father, but he understands that Nathan made choices that mean he can't be part of our daily lives right now. Nathan's relationship with Ethan remained complicated. The court had awarded him limited supervised visitation, which he'd exercised sporadically before his move to Arizona made regular contact more difficult. Whether he would maintain a meaningful presence in his son's life remained uncertain. And you? I asked. How are you doing with everything? Vanessa considered the question seriously. I've made peace with most of it. The hardest part was accepting that I ignored warning signs for years because I wanted to believe in the future he promised. But that recognition has made me more discerning, more attuned to authenticity in all my relationships. Her journey paralleled my own in many ways. The pain of betrayal had eventually yielded to clearer perspectives and stronger boundaries. The design studio in Portland is taking off, she added, referring to the art therapy space she'd opened 6 months earlier. I'm finding purpose in helping others process their own trauma through creative expression. That's wonderful, I said sincerely. You've built something meaningful from the wreckage. As the afternoon progressed, our unusual gathering settled into a comfortable rhythm. Beach exploration, shared meals, genuine conversation untainted by the deceptions that had previously connected us. My parents had embraced their unexpected role in this reconfigured social equation, my father teaching Ethan to fly a kite while my mother and Vanessa discovered shared interests in gardening. That evening, after Ethan had fallen asleep exhausted from his beach adventures, the adults gathered around a fire pit on the deck. Stars emerged in the darkening sky as we shared stories and reflections on the year's journey. A toast, Renee proposed, raising her wine glass. To truth, however. Difficult. To authenticity, however challenging. And to the courage to demand both, however comfortable the lies might seem. To healing, my mother added, and to the family we choose. As glasses clinked in the firelight, I felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over me. The path that had brought us here had been painful beyond measure, but the destination, this moment of genuine connection, of lives rebuilt on foundations of truth, held a beauty I couldn't have imagined in the darkest moments a year ago. The betrayal that had shattered my world, had ultimately freed me from a life of beautiful illusions. In its place stood something stronger, something real. A future built not on elaborate deceptions but on the simple, powerful foundation of truth. And that, I realized as I gazed at the stars above the Pacific, was worth every painful step of the journey. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.